Are we going live yet or no?
We can go whenever you're ready.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Welcome back to another edition of WCBN sports coverage of Michigan football. As today, the Wolverines take on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV Rebels. My name is Shai Dweck, and I am joined in the booth today by Vihaan Easwar. How are you doing today, Vihaan?
Hey, Shai. It's great to be here in this magnificent venue, this cathedral of college football, this cauldron of sporting myth and legend that's hopefully going to bubble and give rise to a new throng of Michigan football immortals this season, a long-awaited throng of champions. Now, history dictates that the Wolverines should win this matchup. The last and only time these schools faced off against each other, our Wolverines came away with a hearty 28-7 victory in 2015. But the then is no strict determiner of the now, and the Wolverines should be wary of a tough opponent with the potential to exploit some of their bigger weaknesses.
Well, let's get into what happened here last week against East Carolina. There was a lot to like from the Wolverines' 30-3 victory over the Pirates. For one, J.J. McCarthy looked great, passing for over 280 yards and 3 scores. He was decisive with the ball, made crisp throws with great anticipation, connecting on intermediate throws on in and out-breaking routes, and perhaps found a connection with his new favorite receiver, Roman Wilson, connecting with him for a hat trick of touchdowns. Vihaan, what did you like about McCarthy's performance last week, and do you think Michigan fans should feel confident that the second-year starter can lead this team to a national championship, or is it still too early to say?
I absolutely don't think it's too early to say. I think McCarthy is the man. He throws a clean, crisp ball. There's a lot of power in there. He gets his throws where he needs them to be. He's got good reads. He makes the right decisions. He's smart. He's not the most mobile quarterback. You know, I wouldn't call him a dual threat, but he's capable of using his feet to get out of those difficult situations. He seems to be a born leader. I see no reason why he's not going to contend for the Heisman. Maybe he's not the most obvious contender on the roster with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, but I see no reason why his name can't be in that hat. He was one of the biggest revelations of the previous college football season. He's got the tools of your modern, great NFL quarterback. I'm absolutely excited to see what he can do, and I so firmly believe he is the man to take us to the promised land after a long, long time.
Well, he'll certainly look to build on his performance last week today against UNLV. Now, let's get into some improvements we may like to see from the Wolverines. Many would say they played well, but not great against East Carolina. Although the defensive secondary and the passing game offensively were able to generate success, the Wolverines were not quite as dominant up front and in the trenches as we are used to seeing, Vihaan. Offensively, McCarthy was under pressure at the beginning of the game at times, and the running game lacked its usual explosiveness that we are accustomed to seeing, rushing for a total of 122 yards on the game and under 4 yards per carry. And defensively, Michigan was not able to record a single sack, something we rarely see. Were these areas concerning to you, Vihaan, and what can we expect from the Michigan offense today, particularly the running game?
Well, I think you could chalk up some deficiencies last week in the running game to Blake Corum being eased back in the team solely after his unfortunate and costly injury last season. I do think the running game will start to gel a little bit better this week, and I just think they need a bit of time. They need to get into a rhythm, and I do think the substitute coaches need to figure out how we're going to balance that Corum-Edwards tandem. I think last week was just a bit of a curve, growing pains, but I do think that the run game is here to stay, and I do think they're going to be a big part of the game today. But what really concerns me is the pass rush, because this isn't just a this season problem, this is a last season problem. Do you want to hear a statistic? It's not a good statistic, but so the highest sack getters currently on our roster are Jalen Harrell and Josiah Stewart, who both only had 3.5 sacks last year. This is a Rebels team that runs the ball a lot. You just got to do better.
Yeah, and I think those are big shoes to fill, especially when you lose a guy in the interior in Mozzie Smith, now a Dallas Cowboy in the NFL, obviously, and number 55, Mason Graham, is going to have big shoes to fill, along with Chris Jenkins on the interior of the defensive line. So perhaps they could gain some in pressure on the interior to help guys like Jalen Harrell and Josiah Stewart out returning from last season, particularly in the sacks category. Now, let's get into UNLV. They pose a little bit of a unique challenge for the Michigan defense as they come off a 44-14 victory over Bryant, led by a potent rushing attack featuring misdirections, triple options, and multiple capable runners. The Michigan defense will certainly have a lot to keep track of today, but it all starts with UNLV quarterback Doug Brumfield, who can be dangerous with his dual threat ability and outside the pocket. The Rebel offense totaled 268 yards on the ground, including all 5 of its touchdowns. Vihaan, how will the Michigan defense look to contain Brumfield and stop the UNLV rushing attack today?
So at least in my opinion, I think a big part of shutting down dual threat quarterbacks and in general run-heavy opponents, you've got to close off those spaces, which means we need to see some corner blitzes and safety blitzes. We need to see those holes being plugged in. We need a tight defensive line that maintains its shape at all times. We need our inside linebackers to be really mobile. We need them to be on their feet. We need them to see those spaces, and we need them to get their reads to get them into the right position. I think it's going to be an ugly defensive game. It's going to be a war of attrition. It's not going to be fun to watch, but that's what wins you games against run-heavy teams. Because if you give someone like Doug Brumfield space, he will exploit that space. And that's why I don't think not getting a sack is necessarily a huge issue today. Obviously, it's a big issue for the rest of the season. But today, it's not so much of an issue against a quarterback that's not going to stay on his feet much in the first place, who's not a pocket passer. I think it's more we need smart movement. We need those holes to be plugged in. And I think most importantly, we need our defensive backs to come in from the back on those corner and safety blitzes. We need to plug in those holes. I think it's all about maintaining formation. It's about maintaining position. It's about there being no gaps in the defensive line. This is somewhere that someone like Mozzie Smith would have helped. But this new defensive core is just going to have to learn to understand each other's movements, to not break, to stay glued to their man at all times, because even the slightest slip is an opportunity for Brumfield and the Rebels to exploit.
I think those are all great points, and I think it's going to start, as you mentioned, with the Michigan linebacking core, and you have a guy in Junior Colson, number 25, led the team with 101 tackles last season. He's certainly going to look to plug in those holes, as you mentioned, and Ernest Hausman looked great as well, leading the team with 6 tackles last week against East Carolina. And you mentioned this would be a little bit of an ugly defensive game, Vihaan. Elaborate on that a little bit for me. Do you think that the Michigan offense might struggle a little bit more than they did last week, scoring 30 points against East Carolina?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case, because I'm not sure if there's much that suggests that the Rebels have a significantly better defense than East Carolina. I think it's more that their offense can be potentially lethal to the Wolverines if they don't do what I said. And you want me to elaborate a bit on what I meant with an ugly defensive game plan, right?
Sure.
Well, I think it's more ugly for neutral fans who want a fun, high-scoring game with a lot of first downs, a lot of big gains. It's got to be like, no, you've got to limit them to 2 to 3 yards a down and keep forcing those punts. You've got to just not let them move the ball. And how do you do that? You close off the spaces. You don't allow them to exploit it. And Brumfield's passing stats are not awful. He went 164 for 254 last season with 1,898 yards, 10 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So he's not the most flashy thrower, but he seems to be relatively mistake-free. Seems to be a pretty clean quarterback. But essentially, Russia keep closing those holes that allow him to run, force him to throw, and that's where Michigan's defensive backs, which are one of the highlights of the team, especially Mike Sainristil, who I consider to be the heartbeat of that backfield, they need to get their interceptions. They need to hawk the ball. As long as the defensive line, specifically Junior Colson, specifically Ernest Hausman, and specifically the defensive line, as long as they can do that and close off those spaces and prevent big gains on the ground, I think that's a game plan to stopping the Rebels' offense.
I think those are a lot of great points. Last, let's examine the coaching battle between the two teams today. The Rebels have a first-year head coach, former Missouri head coach Barry Odom. Barry Odom's defense is going to be tasked with stopping J.J. McCarthy and the Wolverines offense as it looks to build on its 30-point performance last week. But on the other side, more interestingly, with Jim Harbaugh facing the second game of his 3-game suspension, he has tasked his son, special teams coordinator Jay Harbaugh, to coach the first half, and Mike Hart, running backs coach, to coach the second. What do you make of the decision to not only have different coaches for each game of the suspension, but also to have 2 separate coaches for each half in the game today alone? And do you think that this coaching variance will show itself throughout the game? And also, we do have Sherrone Moore coming back as the play caller today. So how do you think that this kind of variance in coaching from this week to last week to even next week will change the Wolverines' performance, Vihaan?
Well, this is an answer that I don't think a lot of Wolverines fans are particularly going to like, but I do think that it's a reasonable explanation for what we're saying. Harbaugh has repeatedly flirted with big-name NFL coaching positions in the past few years. There were heavy links of him taking over the Saints after Sean Payton's retirement. He was heavily linked to the Broncos job an offseason or 2 ago. There were also links to the Dolphins and even to the New York Giants. I do think that the university is preparing for a future where, despite his extension, he may still choose to return to the NFL, where he had a considerable amount of success with the San Francisco 49ers almost a full decade ago. One potential option is Justin Herbert and the Chargers, with Brandon Staley coming under significant fire. And I think the university is using this as an opportunity to, maybe get a feel for who a successor is. Because when you think about it, these are 2 games against teams that, not to disrespect them, but they should be fairly straightforward wins for the Wolverines. These are games that potentially you don't have much risk of losing with or without Harbaugh. I think they want to see the different strengths and weaknesses of each of their coaching candidates in preparation for one day life after Harbaugh and see who might be able to take the reins from him in the future.
I absolutely agree. I think it definitely serves you well to gain experience with various assistants who have shown their capability as assistants, Vihaan, but putting him into those leadership roles I think will be crucial for the future. But I will say this, you never want to look past your opponent in sport, no matter on what level, no matter, if it's a Michigan versus a UNLV. And it does seem to me that perhaps the decision to have multiple coaches rotating in could be doing just that with the lack of consistency there. Does that strike you at all as resonating, or are you not too worried about that perception of the Michigan program here?
Well, now that you mention it, yes. And like I said, I do think they were trying something similar with the East Carolina game last week to good, but as you said, maybe not great results, because if I recall correctly, this Michigan team was blowing out such opponents by 50-plus points last season. I do think, yes, you should never overlook an opponent, and maybe to an extent that's being done here. Although at the same time, if there's an opportunity to potentially rotate, is now not the time?
I think it is the time, and I think that I think the benefits of these decisions probably do outweigh the cost, Vihaan. And the next thing I kind of want to get into that I noticed last week against ECU is a lot more passes early than runs. But now we will be handing it off to William Gregory and Simone Roberts for coverage of the first half after a short break.
Our most sincere apologies, but we will actually be staying on with you for just a couple more minutes, as we have a little more time than we initially anticipated. So those are some of our thoughts on just the game and what you can expect here. Like we said, the Wolverines still look strong, but there are some noted weaknesses. I think another thing I'm interested in seeing, and Shai, I'm sure you're also interested in seeing this, is how will this new group of receivers gel well with J.J. McCarthy, especially after he lost his favorite weapon, Ronnie Bell, to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, again, I apologize for the abruptness of that stop. I think that the adjustment has been going smoothly. Roman Wilson, 3 touchdowns last week. His speed is so dangerous. To get that separation can be really helpful for a young quarterback or even a seasoned quarterback and a second-year starter like J.J. McCarthy. Not to mention guys like Cornelius Johnson having success over the middle on in-breaking routes. And someone to watch, as always, is Colston Loveland, the emerging tight end from last season. He had over 230 yards and 4 touchdowns, a breakout game against Ohio State last year, which was crucial. Him and Cornelius Johnson, both, as Cornelius Johnson went for 160 yards against the Big Blues rival in that crucial game. I think JJ knows what he has in these weapons, but do look for freshman Carmelo English, number 5, and Frederick Moore, number 3, to get involved a little bit more this week against UNLV. But I think McCarthy's comfortable with what he has, and I think we'll see that today.
Yes, and recent college football seasons have shown us that in the past, some quarterbacks do decline after losing some of their favored weapons. One example that comes to mind is Sam Howell of UNC a few seasons ago, who, after losing the likes of Javonte Williams to the NFL, had his draft stock plummet after a somewhat poor season. But I don't think J.J. McCarthy is necessarily that way. I think he has enough tools. I think he has that sharpness to allow him to adapt and improvise to whatever he has. And I think he's a special talent. I think he's going to do great at Michigan this season, and I think he's going to do great in the NFL whenever he does make the adaptation. However, now is the time that we are going to hand it off to William Gregory and Simone Roberts for our game. So thank you for staying on with us during our pregame show. I'm Vihaan Easwar, and this has been Shai Dweck with WCBN. We will be joining you again for the second half, but in the meantime, go Blue.
Welcome back to the Big House in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a non-conference matchup between the number 2 ranked Michigan Wolverines and the UNLV Runnin Rebels. After some surprisingly tough sledding on the ground against East Carolina in a 30-3 win, Michigan will need to step up to face an improving UNLV rush defense and an exciting go-go offense under offensive coordinator Brennan Marion and first-year head coach Barry Odom. Special teams coordinator and safeties coach Jay Harbaugh will be the head coach for the Wolverines in the first half, giving way to Mike Hart in the second. The biggest thing the Wolverines will need to do is to limit the Rebs' running game. Like I said, that go-go offense is incredible to watch. The Rebels rushed for 268 yards as a team in a 44-14 win over the FCS Bryant Bulldogs. I welcome in my broadcast partner for the first half this afternoon, Simone Roberts. Simone, what will Michigan need to do on defense today to produce a similar performance to last week?
Well, thanks for having me here. And, you know, last week they held ECU to 235 yards, and they were missing a couple of key starters. They were missing Rod Moore, and they were also missing Will Johnson, and we'll see them back a little bit in action today. Again, like you said earlier, UNLV has a very run-heavy offense, and so they're going to have to hold them to that and also make sure that they can contain their wide receivers. We have a couple of key wide receivers in UNLV, and so it's going to be really important for them to make sure that they stay in their hip and make sure that they keep their eyes on their targets.
And this passing game for UNLV is not necessarily explosive, but when Doug Brumfield, the junior quarterback out of Inglewood, California, for the Rebels, needs to make a throw, he will. He has number 11, Ricky White, at wide receiver, along with Jacob DeJesus and Seneca McKee. Ricky White, that first name I mentioned, may be familiar to you folks at home. Halloween in 2020, Ricky White went for 8 catches, 195 yards against Michigan for Michigan State. He's a transfer student here to UNLV. Was setting freshman records, dominating the freshman record books receiving at Michigan State. Comes here to UNLV, and the Wolverines really cannot afford to have him have a big game today like he did 3 years ago. But this rushing attack is really what Michigan will be focusing on today. UNLV has some interesting formations. We won't be able to show them to you, obviously, being a radio broadcast, but they have a stacked backfield look where the quarterback is in the shotgun formation. He'll have 2 running backs to his left, but they will be in any sort of stacked formation, one on top of the other, or just both to his side. They also do that under center. It's a really exciting offense under Brennan Marion, who is in his first year as UNLV's offensive coordinator. In 2019, he was with the William & Mary Tribe in the FCS, and that team went to the FCS playoff last year in 2022 under head coach Mike London. The Go-Go offense has revitalized that team. UNLV hopes the same can happen for them in this first year of the new regime under Barry Odom, who is experienced at Missouri, led that team to an SEC title game appearance against Auburn as a defensive coordinator in 2013. But a new era for UNLV football, facing off against the Michigan Wolverines, the highest-ranked team they've played since number 2 Tennessee in 1996. About to get ready for kickoff with Tommy Doman set to boot it away for Michigan. Jacob DeJesus back there to return for UNLV, number 21. Michigan will get the ball to start the second half, but that star-studded defense will be on the field first here in the opening drive of this ball game. Both teams undefeated, ready to go. Tommy Doman boots it away here in Ann Arbor. Hits the end zone for a touchback. DeJesus doesn't field it, and the UNLV offense will take over at the 25-yard line. We'll see captain quarterback Doug Brumfield, as I said. Donovan Lester, also a transfer from William & Mary, experienced in this go-go offense. He's the number 1 running back, but they'll play any combination. They had 7 rushers touch the football in the game against Bryant, rushing for 286 yards. It is a dynamic offense under their quarterback, Brumfield. They come out in the shotgun set. Brumfield, 2 running backs to his left, 2 wide receivers to his left as well. Play fake. The lefty Brumfield rolls out, fires, has a man close to the first down marker. He's tackled down by Mike Sainterstill and a couple other Wolverines. It's about a gain of 8 or 9 to Seneca McKee. They do call it a first down, gain of 10 for UNLV. They come out in that stack set, now running backs to the right. It's a straight give up the middle to Lester, stacked up after a gain of 2 at the 37-yard line. I apologize if I'm slow to get you these numbers of the UNLV offense. They're wearing a white uniform with gray metallic numbers, and it's hard to see who's touching the football. Now they have a split backfield set. Brumfield, straight drop back from the gun. Pass left side to his running back. Tackled down after a short gain of 1 or 2 out to the 39-yard line.
And you can just see how disorienting their go-go offense is. Michigan's defense is really going to have to hone in and focus and make sure that they're focusing on the right guy.
First third down of the ball game, 3rd down and 6 after the catch by Lester. Looks like UNLV is going to air it out here. They have a tight end to the right of the offensive line. Loud here in Michigan Stadium. 1 tailback set to the right of Brumfield, 2 wide receivers right, 1 left at the far side. Brumfield drops back, has a man, it's caught. DeJesus picks up the first down to the 46-yard line, and UNLV 2 quick first downs on the first drive of this ball game. Just outside of 13 minutes remaining in this first quarter. Single back set, quad set to the right. It's a handoff, bouncing outside. Goes Jaden Thomas, and he's tackled for a 2-yard loss. Thomas rushed for 2 touchdowns last week against Bryant. This time, big play made in the backfield by the Wolverines. Tripped up there by Braden McGregor on the right side of the defensive line. Two wide receivers all the way to the near side of the boundary. UNLV on the left hash, 2 running backs split left of Brumfield. Straight give inside, only a pickup of about 1 or 2. It'll be a 3rd down and long, about 11 yards. Tackle made by Kenny Grant on Thomas. Michigan looking to get off the field here on a 3rd and 12. Fresh defensive line in there for Michigan. Benny, Grant, Stewart, Moore. Linebackers Colson and Barrett. Brumfield in the gun once again. Only 1 running back split right, 4 wide for the big lefty. Brumfield drops back, looking, throws. Nobody open towards the sideline, looking for Ricky White. UNLV will punt. Fresh unit coming on the field for the Runnin' Rebs. Marshall Nichols, a transfer from Mississippi State, will boot it away for UNLV. Back to receive this kick is Jake Thaw. We saw him last week returning punts as well. He's back in week 2. Nichols, high snap, punts it away, a low punt. Very knuckler, and it bounds into the end zone for a touchback. Thaw runs up and tells everyone to get away. Michigan will start their first drive of the ball game at the 25-yard line and finally getting off the field after letting up 2 quick first downs. Simone, how do you think of the Wolverines' recovery after that big tackle for loss that set up a long 3rd down?
I think this game, the Michigan Wolverines are really focused on getting that pressure to that QB, but also making sure that they hold those running backs. As we saw earlier on in this game, their running game is very, very strong, and they have some very tough running backs. And so they're really focused on making sure that they also get pressure, but they can also get some sacks. And we saw Braden McGregor make a big play for a loss. So we're going to see what this offense has to do. And then also what UNLV's defense can do against Michigan's very electric running backs and wide receiver core.
Definitely, and you saw McGregor burst through that left side of the offensive line of UNLV. Jalen St. John is a junior transfer from Arkansas, coming over after Barry Odom was previously last year with the Arkansas Razorbacks as an associate head coach. Sam Pittman is the head coach over there in the SEC for Arkansas. And that unit up front prides itself on having a good offensive line. Having a guy like Jalen St. John come over to be your blindside protector of Brumfield is a big transfer get for UNLV, but McGregor sheds that block with ease, makes a big play in the backfield, and sets up a 3rd down and long and an incompletion for Michigan's first possession of the ball game. About a minute 30 away from that as we're in a media timeout here. You're listening to WCBN on YouTube. Thank you for joining us for the second broadcast of the year here from Michigan Stadium. And Simone, this is your first time up at this level of Michigan Stadium. How are you liking it so far? How's this angle for you?
Oh, it's a beautiful view. You get to see everything and hear everything. It's a little bit of a different experience from being closer to the field. And you really get to see the inner workings of every single play. You can also really feel the energy, especially with Michigan having Coach Moore, their offensive line coordinator, back. I'm really going to see how that changes with the line this upcoming drive.
Excited to see. It looks like the teams are breaking the huddle. Still about 40 seconds left on this media timeout. We pride ourselves here at WCBN in providing free coverage without advertisements, but that does mean slogging through an entire media timeout. This is a nationally televised CBS broadcast, so we're in for a lot of those today. But it's the normal offense out there for Michigan. Roman Wilson's going to start out wide right. Looks like a 2 tight end set. Actually, an unbalanced line. Trente Jones in there at the left of left tackle Carson Barnhart. 2 tight ends right. JJ's going to take this snap under center with Blake Corum behind him. So a very heavy set coming out. I think the Wolverines want to establish the run early in this ball game after some struggles against East Carolina. JJ's going to take this snap under center. Corum behind him. JJ, play fake, drops back. 2 tight ends deep, but he dumps it off to Blake Corum, picks up a first down and more up to the 40-yard line. Big gainer of 20 yards for Blake Corum on an easy pitch and catch from J.J. McCarthy. And you see Barner goes on a corner route. Roman Wilson on a go. Empties out the formation for Blake Corum to cut up field on the right side, the far side, up to the 40-yard line. Now J.J. in the pistol. 2 wide receivers, 1 on each side. A.J. Barner to the left, Colston Loveland to the right of the offensive line in close. Corum behind him. Give left to Corum, cuts up field to the 41, gain of maybe 1 or 2. Max Bredesen and Fred Moore come onto the field. Looks like Bredesen is going to be split out into the slot. 3 wide receivers out there. I guess 2 wide receivers. Bredesen comes back into the formation. Now right of the offensive line. JJ once again in the pistol. 2nd down and 8. JJ straight give Corum up the gut. Again gains 1 or 2. And it'll be a 3rd down and 7 or 6. Call that gain of nothing. 3rd down and 8. At the Wolverines' 42-yard line, the running game once again being stymied by an improving UNLV rush defense. They only allowed about 125 yards a game on the ground last season. That was a big improvement from the nearly 200 they allowed 2 seasons ago. Donovan Edwards now in the game at running back, motions to the left of McCarthy. Trips to the right, McCarthy straight drop. McCarthy steps up in the pocket, looks over the middle, got him in! It's caught for the first down, Tyler Morris. Second first down of the ball game for the Wolverines, up to the 42-yard line of the Runnin' Rebs. Diving grab made over the middle by Morris, and McCarthy 2 for 2 in this ball game. Wolverines moving the ball effectively through the air. We saw that against East Carolina. McCarthy back in the gun. 2 wide receivers left. Timeout called by UNLV. Maybe some things they want to change in their pass defense as Michigan was lined up. Seemed like they wanted to throw. So Simone, after a couple tough gains on the ground, the Wolverine pass attack, 2 big chunk plays, setting them up within UNLV territory.
I think it's very interesting. You see the ball touching several different hands. We have a couple of freshmen in there with Frederick Moore, Tyler Morris, who's a little bit younger. And then obviously Roman Wilson, who had a killer game last week. But we also do see UNLV's defense still really doing a good job of holding Michigan's run game. So we'll see what the offense can do leading up into this next possession.
And a mix-up of formations. First play out of the jumbo set. It seemed like that must have been a play they were practicing all week to give the illusion that they were going to run the ball with such a heavy set, and a beautiful play action fake by McCarthy. Roman Wilson clears deep, clears room for Blake Corum on the check down. And then the pistol, where they were trying to run the ball with Blake, only gaining 1 or 2 at a time, finally bust out a throw again on 3rd down and long. Find Tyler Morris for his first reception of the year. And there's just so many playmakers on this offense, with Donovan Edwards finally coming in the game too. and Roman. And JJ is flush with guys who can make plays for him, whether that's in the running game or in the passing game. We'd like to see more from Michigan on the ground today than what we saw last week. But if the passing game looks this good, that's a big evolution in JJ's career as a quarterback. So just 9:27 remaining in the first quarter. Immediate timeout will end shortly. Michigan still 0-0 against the UNLV Runnin' Rebels. Rebels threatened on their first drive, picking up 2 first downs. Big tackle for loss by Braden McGregor set up a 3rd down and long that they couldn't recover from. And now Michigan in UNLV territory at the 42-yard line. J.J. McCarthy, 2 big throws to Blake Corum and Tyler Morris to set them up. We'll talk about the only other time Michigan has faced UNLV was in 2015. Michigan won that game 28-7 in Ann Arbor. UNLV is 2-16 all time against teams that currently make up the Big Ten Conference. This would be a big win under first-year head coach Barry Odom, and especially in a changing landscape of college football where UNLV is trying to spend money to get up there with the big boys in the Mountain West, and whatever remnants of the Pac-12 filter their way down, whatever West Coast football looks like in the future. This is a tone-setting kind of game for UNLV, and while they're not expected to win, Michigan comes in as a near 37-point favorite. UNLV putting up a fight in this game would mean a lot for a program that just in 2020 went 0-6. McCarthy comes out of the media timeout, play fake to Edwards under center, got a man left side, caught all the way down to the 19-yard line. Roman Wilson, after his 3-touchdown effort a week ago, makes a big play to get the Wolverines into the red zone. All the way to the 17, 1st down and 10. Michigan will set up shop there, bring in the power set. Kalel Mellings comes in along with 2 tight ends. Cornelius Johnson in the game. He'll be split wide right. Roman in the slot. Colston Loveland split wide left towards the near sideline. McCarthy in the gun with Mullings. Loveland in motion towards JJ. It's a touch pass to him, and Loveland is tackled for a loss of 3. An interesting play call to get a tight end in space on a jet pass. You don't see that often. More often you'll see a wide receiver or a running back. UNLV sought that play out every step of the way, and it's a loss of 3 on the play, 2nd down and 13. Ball now on the 20-yard line. Blake Corum comes back into the game for Donovan Edwards. Shotgun bunch set. Corum to the right of McCarthy. Roman in the slot, tight to the line of scrimmage. Roman comes in motion, goes past McCarthy, straight drop from JJ. Steps up, looks, pumps, throws. Cornelius Johnson to the 14-yard line, caught. It'll be a 3rd down and 7 from around the 14-yard line.
I think coming out of that media timeout, the O-line is doing a great job of giving JJ a little bit more time in the pocket. We saw there was a little bit of struggles last game, and it's really giving them some time to be a little bit speedier.
And you saw JJ had time there for 2 pumps before finding the open man, Cornelius Johnson. Trip set to the right, JJ in the pistol, Corum behind him. Trying to get a draw on offsides penalty, but it's a straight give up the middle to Blake Corum. Blake Corum cuts up field to the 4-yard line. 1st and goal, Michigan. Big run from Blake Corum, one of the biggest we've seen all season. Wolverines go quick. JJ still stays in the gun. Bunch set. Blake to his left. Handoff Blake into the end zone. Touchdown, Michigan. Up 6-0 here in the first quarter early. The Wolverines take their first lead against UNLV. Two big chunk plays from Blake Corum on the ground set up his first touchdown rush of the season, and it is needed for this Michigan offense. James Turner, the transfer from Louisville, will be set to kick the extra point for Michigan. He missed one last week against East Carolina along with 1 field goal. 2 for 3 overall on the extra points. This one is good. It makes it 7-0. Michigan leads. Big score for Blake Corum. Big drive from J.J. McCarthy showing poise in the pocket. And it'll be up to Doug Brumfield and the Runnin' Rebels to answer on their next drive. So, Simone, you mentioned the offensive line and pass protection looked a lot better on that drive. What about the run blocking did you see that set up that Corum long run and then the touchdown after the no-huddle offense to get back up to the line?
I think this time around the linemen are really setting their feet very well and making sure there's a path for Blake. And I think Blake is also doing a really great job of reading that coverage and making sure that he can fit through any hole that they give them. I think this might be the spark, hopefully, for the rest of the game, for this run game that they need to just get it back and going.
And just that run game, it's been Michigan's calling card throughout Jim Harbaugh's tenure as head coach. And now, obviously, he's not coaching this game, but this is still his team, his fingerprints all over it. And he'll be back for the Rutgers game after the Bowling Green game. But his son, Jay Harbaugh, in his first bit of head coaching experience, been with Michigan since Jim Harbaugh got here in 2015. Graduated from Oregon State, was a GA there for a bit. But Harbaugh getting a chance to coach this game, and it's a really cool thing that Coach Harbaugh is doing, giving 4 assistants a chance to coach these 3 games.
I think it's an excellent point, and I know he even made a comment that every single one of these coaches he could see getting a head coaching job, and you can just see how well they're really planning out this game to set up this team for success leading into conference play.
And we'll see Michigan legendary running back Mike Hart coach the game in the second half. And it's a huge deal for him to be doing that too. I was in Bloomington for the first quarter of that game when he suffered his health problem on Michigan's sideline. That was a very scary situation. So glad to have him back and for him to be able to coach the second half of this ball game is huge for the rest of his career. It's huge for the Michigan family. It's a very exciting time to be a Michigan fan for these non-conference games because they're often ones that people tend to sleep through. And there's been some criticism about Michigan scheduling in the non-conference in recent years, but now with this opportunity for these coaches to get a shot, it means a lot. Not many other coaches in football have been doing that. I know in the NFL, Mike Vrabel have been giving chances with the Tennessee Titans in the preseason for his assistants to coach games. And obviously this comes off a suspension for Harbaugh, but just a cool thing that he's doing, and we're excited to see how it goes along in the rest of this ball game, and then in the next one against Bowling Green. Next weekend, that'll be a night game on WCBN FM. That game will be over the FM airways, along with our YouTube broadcast of that ball game. Doman set to kick off for the second time in this game. Set one into the end zone for a touchback the last time he was out here. David DeJesus. I was thinking of a baseball player. Jacob DeJesus set to return once again, and this time Doman kicks it out the left side of the end zone. It will be an illegal kick. UNLV will start in favorable field position at the 35. It's a 10-yard penalty for an illegal kick out of bounds. And the Rebels have been able to move the ball, they've shown in this game. They did have a drive stall at midfield close to it before a punt. Brumfield will start with a stacked backfield to the left, 2 wide receivers all the way to the far sideline, 1 split right. Brumfield, handoff, right side, big tackle for loss by Kenny Grant, nearly suplexing Jaden Thomas to the ground. And another big tackle for loss by this Wolverine defensive line, loss of 3 on that one.
And even from their first couple of plays from UNLV, Michigan's defense has done a great job of just holding them to 19 yards before this previous play.
Brumfield on the gun, in the gun. 1 running back split left. Straight drop for Brumfield. Looks, fires, has a man over the middle, tipped up in the air. And after a second tip, it's intercepted. Keyshawn Harris. No, the referees will say it was incomplete and trapped by Harris. But 2 tips. 1 off the wide receiver Seneca McKee, then again Ernest Hausman, Then into the arms of Keyshawn Harris. I think they're going to take another look at this to see if he trapped that football. I guess not. UNLV is going to line up. It's definitely warranted for a coach's challenge. The student section wants one. But the Rebels will set up for a 3rd down and 13 from their own 32-yard line. Brumfield drops back, pressured, he's hit and he's sacked. First sack of the year for the Wolverines. It's Derek Moore. Big play by the sophomore edge rusher, and Michigan forces another punt, this time on a 3-and-out.
And as we said earlier, this is exactly what the defense was focusing on improving, not just having pressure on the QB, but actually getting sacks, and this is big for Derek Moore coming into this season.
And I mentioned it's the first sack of the year. They didn't have one at all in the game against East Carolina. Another punt here for Marshall Nichols. Jake Thaw calls out poison. This is a good roll on another knuckler of a punt down to the 25-yard line of Michigan. Just as good as a touchback. And Michigan will start there for their next drive. But a big sack by Moore, first of the year for Michigan, sends Brumfield to the ground, and the Wolverines will set up again, this time up 7-0 with 5:44 to go in the first quarter. And we've been waiting for that edge rush production. Just, 4 quality edge rushers for Michigan. McGregor, the transfer Josiah Stewart from Coastal Carolina, along with Moore. An embarrassment of riches at that position with what they got. And they have, for a long time, been trying to replace the production of David Ojabu and Aiden Hutchinson, but the edge rush by committee approach they've gone with the past 2 years has definitely struck fear in the minds of opposing quarterbacks.
You can definitely see the team effort, especially with Derek Moore. You saw Kenneth Grant was in there a little bit, helping him out. As many people as possible, just trying to get that single goal of getting a sack.
Another media timeout. We're seeing a t-shirt toss towards the student section side and a frisbee toss with a beautiful looking black lab. We'll see if he can make the grab towards the sidelines into the cheerleaders. Always so fun time with the fan engagement experience at Michigan Stadium. Victor, the frisbee dog. You know, some people in East Lansing might take offense to a frisbee dog here at Michigan Stadium, but Victor makes the catch at the goal line, and the crowd goes wild. But Zeke the Wonder Dog has been a mainstay at Spartan Stadium for a very long time. That was the first thing my mom said when she saw this game on TV, was that she was surprised, as a Michigan State alum, that Michigan had a frisbee dog on the field.
Well, even in just these 2 games, he's become a staple. As you mentioned before, the crowd went wild when he got those 2 catches.
.38 seconds remaining on the media timeout. We'll get back to Wolverines offensive football. And going back to the big play made on the ground by Blake Corum, 2 plays in the red zone, one that set up the Wolverines at the 3 or 4 yard line. No huddle offense, and a quick dive to Corum out of the shotgun gets them in the end zone. Maybe we see this run game open up on this second offensive drive for Michigan. Corum back out there, split left with JJ. 2 wide receivers to the left, 1 to the right, that's CJ. And AJ Barner on the left side of the offensive line, split outside of the left tackle, Carson Barnhart. JJ set to receive the snap, 1st and 10 from his own 25. Donovan Edwards in motion from the left to the right. JJ claps, looks like zone coverage. Dono comes back around to the left side. Give right side Blake Corum, finds a hole. Blake Corum cuts right up to the 31-yard line before he's cut down. Gain of about 6, 2nd down and 4 for Michigan. It's a good job by Corum sifting through the traffic. That big UNLV defensive line, 2 big defensive tackles, Darius Johnson and Tutuo Martinson, form what looks to be a 3-4 nickel defense most of the time, but 3 big defensive linemen for UNLV to try and corral this Michigan rush game. Donovan Edwards split left all the way to the near sideline for J.J. McCarthy, who sits in the pistol with Corum behind him. Play fake. No, give to Corum, left side. Corum cuts up field. First down and more up to the 39-yard line. Gain of 8 for Blake Corum, and now these big chunk running plays seem to be becoming easier for the Michigan offense. Seeing a lot of this pistol set mixed in between stuff out of the shotgun. Only the first play was under center for the Wolverines today. And now JJ will go back under center. 2 tight ends, one to the left, one to the right, 2 wide receivers. Now Bredesen comes into the fullback position, I formation, tight end on the left. It's a pitch to Edwards outside. Edwards trying to get the corner, but Dono can only gain about 1 or 2 before being escorted out of bounds by UNLV junior cornerback Cameron Oliver. Big defensive line change, almost everybody out and everybody in for UNLV on 2nd down and 10 from the Michigan 39. Elijah Shelton, the Utah transfer, stays in the game though. He is set up as the right edge rusher. JJ in the gun, Dono split left. In the backfield. JJ gets the snap, drops, fires, right side caught, Roman Wilson. Gains 3 or 4 yards up to the 42-yard line. Will set up a 2nd down and medium, or 3rd down and medium, 3rd down and 6 from the 43-yard line.
JJ had a little bit of pressure on him, but he did a great job of beautifully getting that ball off to Roman and not losing yardage going into this next play. They're trying to get a 1st down with 6 yards to go.
Substitutions coming on for the Wolverines. Not really bleeding the play clock at all in this game. 3:10 remaining in the first quarter. Loveland in motion from left to right. 2 wide receivers wide left for McCarthy with Edwards to the right of him in the gun. JJ drops back, moves around. JJ steps up. He's going to throw. Has a man. Tyler Morris once again a big 1st down on 3rd down. Another time finding Tyler Morris. JJ making plays, working through his progressions, picking the right read, this time on the move, showcasing his pocket mobility. Michigan goes quick, now in the pistol. Edwards in the game, gets the straight give up the middle. No gain on that play, could possibly be a loss of 1. It stays at the 42, 2nd down and 10.
There's a little bit of a pattern. After bigger plays, they're getting that ball off a little bit quicker to just try and get down the field as fast as possible.
We've seen it a few times already in this ball game. Now JJ in the gun. A lot of tight end motion as well. Now 2 tight ends left, 2 wide receivers to the right. Edwards to the right of JJ. JJ drops back. McCarthy finds Blake Corum. Excuse me, it wasn't Edwards, it was Corum in the backfield for a gain of 2 yards up to the 40-yard line. Another 3rd down and medium, 3rd down and 7. 2nd reception for Blake Corum today. That's one thing that the NFL draft evaluators want to see from Blake this season is more utilization as a pass catcher out of the backfield. I think it's a skill set he possesses, but just not one that he's been able to showcase often here in Ann Arbor. He's such a talented runner. But 2 quick receptions here for him in the first quarter. 1:25 to go in this opening period. JJ in the gun. Drops back. Looking. Moves up in the pocket. Finds another receiver. This time it's A.J. Barner up to the 27-yard line. An incredible pocket awareness from J.J. McCarthy on these past 2 drives. Working through almost every read, this offensive line is doing a great job protecting him. You give a talented quarterback like McCarthy all the time in the world in the pocket, he's going to make you pay. Inside of a minute to go in the first quarter. 1st down and 10 at the 27-yard line at UNLV. McCarthy's going to go under center here. 2 tight ends to the left. Blake Corum directly behind McCarthy. Now A.J. Barner moves from left to right. Handoff right side, Corum. Blake cuts up field to the 19-yard line before he's tackled down. Gain of 7 yards, or 8 for Corum, now 2nd down and 2. Michigan's 2nd time in the red zone. They bring in a 3rd tight end, Matthew Hibner, alongside Barner and Bredesen. Those three tight ends bunched up to the left side of the formation. Roman Wilson split all the way wide left towards the near sideline. McCarthy in the gun. Now Bredesen moves over. McCarthy keeps it outside. McCarthy gets a corner and is tackled down at the 4-yard line. Nice tackle made by UNLV. Beautiful fake by McCarthy. Fake to give to Blake Corum, cut outside to the right, and all the way down to the 4-yard line. A big QB keeper. Nice block by Max Bredesen outside, and McCarthy gets all the way down there before being escorted out of bounds by Thomas Anderson. That'll be the end of the first quarter. College football moving fast these days. Michigan set up on the backside of it. Now at the 2-yard line, they're spotting this football. First down and goal when we return for the second quarter. And Simone, that blocking on that play was incredible. You saw Bredesen coming over from the left side of the offensive line from his tight end position in the bunch and kick out, block the linebacker for McCarthy to be able to read that play, not hand the ball off to Blake, but take it outside all the way. And it looked like he had the corner, but a big tackle made by the junior cornerback, Thomas Anderson, who had an interception last week against Bryant. He is one of the best defensive playmakers for UNLV on this team. Big tackle by him, but Michigan set up goal to go on the backside of this quarter.
You can see JJ's had a lot of patience, especially with that play with A.J. Barnard. You saw there was 2 defenders coming right in front of him, and if he had rushed it, it would have been a clear interception. So he did a great job of reading the defense and making sure the ball went to the right man.
Michigan drum line out by the end zone closest to the student section. We've got about 3.5 minutes to go in this media timeout. We'll take a look at the stats. Michigan 153 total yards in that first quarter. After the sack by Derek Moore, UNLV down to 10 total yards, -9 rush yards, and that is not what the Runnin' Rebs would like to see, given that their offense is so much predicated on that running game. But the vaunted Michigan rush defense, which has been incredible to watch the past 3 seasons, has been up to the task to stop what is quite possibly the most exotic offense in the high levels of college football.
And that's exactly what Michigan's defense needs to do and needs to practice going into these conference games. Obviously, later on in the season, we have some big road games, and we also have a big home game. And these teams have really great running back cores, and the defense needs to do a good job of holding that rushing game to make sure that they can be successful farther off in the season.
Definitely. And Simone, you ran track. You see Savannah Sutherland being honored at the end zone. Do you want to speak a little bit about her and your relationship with her? You seem to be very happy that she's being honored.
Yeah, it was pretty cool helping recruit her and her coming in as a freshman and seeing her win the 400-meter hurdles at the NCAA level as just a sophomore last season. And she was even dominating as a freshman, and she also was 16th in the world over the summer in the 400 hurdles, and she can also run a killer 400 meters. So it'll be interesting to see what she can do going into her junior year.
Competing for Team Canada, really cool. And Aurora Rinda also on that team, right? Yep. Michigan track, a lot of great talented runners on that team. And you see it all across our non-revenue sports at the University of Michigan. That there are so many talented student athletes across the landscape, whether that be field hockey, track, swimming. A lot of fun to peek into any game these days and have a lot of fun doing it. Wolverines on the opposite side now. The end zone away from the student section. McCarthy in the gun. First down and goal from the 2. Blake Corum split to the left. Bredesen comes in close to the right. Corum inside, breaks through the end zone. Touchdown Michigan. Blake Corum, second of the day, makes it 13-0 Wolverines.
The offensive line did a great job of making a little tunnel for him, and he just rushed right through. You can see the offensive line is really focused on protecting their runner and protecting their QB, and it's paying off for the Wolverines this game.
And this is the Blake Corum we've all been waiting to see. Ever since his injury against Illinois, we've been wanting to see Blake on the football field, and his first multi-touchdown game in quite a while. It's a welcome sight after his torrid start to the season before that injury against Illinois. I mean, he was going to get Heisman votes and go to New York, but now back on the field, and looks like the Michigan rush game will be potent again after they've been imparting their will onto the UNLV Runnin' Rebels. Second extra point attempt by James Turner, up and good, 14-0. Michigan Wolverines lead with 14:56 remaining in the second quarter. First play of the second quarter goes for a 2-yard touchdown. Blake Corum, his second of the day, and we'll see how Doug Brumfield and the UNLV go-go offense can respond after it seems that Michigan has sort of figured them out after that first drive, 2 quick first downs. The gimmick of the offense and the talent disparity just not enough it's too big of a gap to be bridged. Michigan's going to come out and boot it away again. Tommy Doman had an illegal kick out of bounds. His last kickoff attempt to touch back the first time. We'll see if he can send it straight away to Jacob DeJesus. Doman sends it close, now out of the end zone for another touchback for Tommy Doman. UNLV will start at the 25-yard line, first down and 10, down 14-0. Michigan first string defense back out onto the field. It's possible that we see Rod Moore as well as Will Johnson today, but in another non-conference game that Michigan is heavily favored in. Maybe good that it's not too much. Those are two of the biggest playmakers for the Michigan defense, future NFL players in the defensive backfield for Michigan. Brumfield comes out in the shotgun set. 2 running backs split to the left in that stack formation. Brumfield pulls it after a play fake. Catch outside made by DeJesus. DeJesus cuts upfield all the way to the 40-yard line, gain of 15. Nice catch and run by Jacob DeJesus. And this UNLV passing attack, Brumfield held under 100 yards throwing a week ago against Bryant, is looking like the best part of their offense right now, already up to 34 yards passing overall. Brumfield is a capable passer. He's a big 6'6", 225 at the quarterback position. This time pulls on another play fake. Free rusher coming inside, and a sack made once again. This time Jalen Harrell in there to clean it up. Quentin Johnson in there on a safety blitz. Made the first effort to tackle Brumfield. Brumfield dodged away from him, but Harrell there to clean it up. Second sack of the ball game for the Wolverines.
The Wolverine defense has had a great sense of awareness, especially with Junior coming back and reading that play. If he hadn't run across the field, that receiver would have been gone.
Brumfield, second down and 16 from the 34. In the gun, stacked right are 2 running backs. Inside give goes to Donovan Lester. Gains about 2 or 3 yards, 3rd and 13 at the 37-yard line. Another 3rd down and long for UNLV, and they keep going backwards on their last few offensive drives. It's not often against this Michigan defense they'll get a 15-yard chunk play like they did on their first play of this drive. Now they have to work under duress. Three wide receivers split in a trip set to the right, 1 wide receiver to the left. Brumfield takes the low snap. Dives from pressure, can't evade Jalen Harrell and Mike Barrett, though. Another sack for Michigan, a half sack for Jalen Harrell. Mason Graham and Chris Jenkins all in there as well. The whole defensive line got through on that play. And Brumfield got away from the first bit of pressure, but Harrell there once again to clean it up. 3rd sack for Michigan, 4th down and 20. The UNLV offensive line looks severely overmatched against the Wolverine defensive front. Another punt for Marshall Nichols. This one a poor punt, only to the 41-yard line. Virtually no hang time on that one, and it's been tough. This time Joe Taylor back there along with Jake Thaw. Neither unable to field that punt cleanly. 12:28 to go here in the second quarter. Michigan's got it at their own 41-yard line, up 14-0. 2 Blake Corum touchdowns have powered Michigan to this lead, and they look, after a bit of rust being knocked off in the Week 1 matchup against East Carolina, they look a lot better on both sides of the ball in this game.
And these are what these non-conference games are for, just to get your groove back in. We have a couple of new players on both sides of the ball, and you can just see how they're contributing to team success. Obviously on UNLV's side, they tried to show their running core, and Michigan's defense is starting to get a hang and learning how to read them.
Two minutes until we get back to action after this media timeout. A Korea veteran being honored on the sidelines, Mr. Carmen Milia. The crowd rightfully respecting this man who's given a lot in service to his country. Also World War II, Korea, and a Vietnam veteran. 3 of the biggest wars this country has fought in the 20th century. Love the respect given to our veterans here on Military Appreciation Weekend, with 9/11 just around the corner on Monday. The cheer team is wearing a maize and blue camo kind of get up along with the dancing squad. UNLV, a look at the stats, down to negative 19 yards on the ground. Michigan, 155 total yards. With the amount of negative yards that UNLV has lost, they actually have almost completely canceled out all their nice gains they've made in the passing game. We've seen them work on first down and hit some nice plays, but then the pressure is just too overwhelming. Michigan's starting to send some blitz packages. We saw Quentin Johnson get in one, setting up a Jalen Harrell sack. And then the defensive line of Michigan just really getting through on their own, a straight 4-man rush, with Harrell getting around the left tackle side, Mason Graham getting in there as well, pressuring the interior. Looked like a double team on Chris Jenkins on that play as well, which took an extra lineman away from the additional rusher. Michigan's 3rd offensive drive of the ball game. J.J. McCarthy in the shotgun set. Colston Loveland motions from right to left, now split out wide in the slot before McCarthy takes a snap. Straight drop out of the shotgun. McCarthy delivers, finds Loveland up to the 49-yard line of UNLV. Will be just shy of the first down. It'll be 2nd down and inches just across midfield. And this is always a situation where teams want to unload a shot play, 2nd down and short from close to midfield. We'll see if the Wolverines go deep here. It's something we have yet to see them do today. JJ in a pistol look. One back set behind him, 2 wide receivers to the right, 1 left, 1 tight end to the left of the offensive line. Roman Wilson moves in closer. Give left side, Donovan Edwards makes a cut. First down, Michigan. And Edwards up to the 46-yard line is tackled down by a few Runnin Rebels. Michigan moving the ball methodically ever since that big gashing run by Corum in the red zone that set up the first touchdown of the ball game. The offense has looked very efficient, and McCarthy is a big part of that, working through his reads, finding the open man. Loveland again motions left to right. McCarthy drops back, this time towards the outside corner route. Cornelius Johnson has it at the 26-yard line of UNLV. Big pitch and catch made to the outside corner. Tough outside throw by McCarthy is complete, and Michigan sets up shop, 1st down and 10, close to the red zone. And Johnson just working outside, evading a good play on the football made by Jet Elid. J.J. McCarthy layers that football in between 3 UNLV players. Now in the gun. Edwards, touch pass from right to left. Edwards trying to cut back inside, and Dono is down after breaching the 25-yard line, getting to the 23. We've seen that touch pass now for the second time. First one to Colston Loveland resulted in a loss of a few yards. This time Dono gets it working from the right slot, catching, working to the left side of McCarthy, but the edge was not set. He had to cut back inside, only gains a few. Now 2nd down and 7 from the 23. 2 tight ends split to the left of the offensive line. McCarthy in the shotgun with Edwards split left once again. 2 wide receivers stacked to the right. It's Frederick Moore and Cornelius Johnson. McCarthy give left side Edwards, and he is tackled down. A nice play made there by Osei Egbase of UNLV, making the tackle to drag Donovan Edwards to the ground. Sets up a 3rd down and 5. McCarthy in a shotgun set. Edwards split left. Fakes the snap, gets the call from the sidelines. Now Edwards moves from the left to the right. 2 wide receivers split right for McCarthy. Another inside give to Edwards. Moving left, bounces outside, but a nice edge set by UNLV. Sets up a 4th down and 2 at the 18, and the Wolverines are going to go for it. Donovan Edwards is going to sub out for Blake Corum. A.J. Barner coming onto the field. The Wolverines are going to go heavy here on 4th down. We've seen them come out in heavy sets a few times in this ball game, but a lot of times it's to set up a play-action pass. This time on 4th and 2, it's an empty set for McCarthy. Blake Corum in the slot. Now motions to the left of McCarthy in the gun. 3 tight ends. Roman Wilson moving from right to left. Inside give. Corum working inside. I don't think he got the 1st down. The referees are going to mark him just short of the 21-yard line to gain. And it seems as though UNLV makes a big stop on 4th down in the red zone. Just not a lot of push up front for the Michigan offensive line. Blake Corum had to work through a lot of traffic to get the line to gain. The officials are still conferencing on the spot of this football, and they point in the direction for UNLV. Michigan turns the football over on downs. And although it's inside their own 20-yard line, this starting field position for the Rebels has to feel good to get a turnover on a very, very effective Michigan offense so far that just stumbled into a series where they didn't look as dominant. We'll have a media timeout with 8:32 remaining in the 2nd quarter. And UNLV only down 14. This game is not out of reach yet for them. And that turnover on downs is huge for their chances to get back into this ball game. And Simone, what did you see on that play where Corum gets stuffed up the middle? It seemed as though the Wolverines are working with a lot of misdirection today, coming out in an empty set, motioning a running back inside, then running the football, or coming out in a heavy set and turning out to pass the football. Is this a situation where they're getting a little bit too cute on offense, where they just need to figure it out and run the football right up the middle?
It looks like on some of these plays there's a little bit of misdirection and a little bit of miscommunication, especially on that play where they're trying to stuff them down to the 1st down. As you said, it does look like they're trying as many possible plays as possible just to get down that field, and maybe we need to come back down to the roots and figure out how to get that rushing play back.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen it a lot. Over the past few years, the offense has diversified, but one of the main criticisms of Jim Harbaugh in the first few years that he was here at Michigan was that the offense was too simplistic and just kind of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You know what's coming every single play. It's going to be a run play most of the time on 1st down or even on 2nd down. But with McCarthy as Michigan's starting quarterback, we've seen the shotgun formation be the base set of this offense rather than being an under-center pro-style offense. And maybe with Blake Corum's effectiveness as a runner inside, you concede to move a little bit towards that style of offense once again. You just don't want to get stuffed against a mid-major team at home when you're driving to try and go up 3 scores and really put this game away. Although we're in the 2nd quarter, a 21-0 lead with how Michigan's defense has been playing is almost insurmountable for a UNLV offense that can be explosive, but today it seems as though their pass protection is going to let them down until they can get that shored up.
But as you said, it's been a little interesting to see the evolution of the passing game. That's going to be really important, especially if we, in some plays where Michigan can't get the runners through the offensive line. It's going to be very important that JJ can find those receivers and tight ends down the line. And it also just speaks to the depth that they have, especially with the new transfer in AJ, and then also dumping it off to Colston Loveland. And even the changing in wide receivers just speaks to the differences that they have.
5-man defensive front for the Wolverines. 3 defensive tackles in the game with the edge rushers, Moore and Harrell. Brumfield comes out in the gun with an H-back, moving left to right now, settles in at the tight end position. Brumfield, play fake, rolls left, pressured by Keon Sabb. Brumfield makes a play, cuts upfield, now crosses all the way to the right side before picking up a first down. Brumfield ran a long way on that play to pick up 10 yards and move the chains for UNLV. He has shown himself to be a playmaker, and Keon Sabb, just a much smaller football player, being shut off the big 6'6" frame of Brumfield. Good blocking by UNLV once the play started to break down, and it was all Brumfield cutting up right before Chris Jenkins made the tackle. Brumfield, another play fake, rolling left, this time pressured, spins away once again, but the Wolverines clean it up in the backfield. Kenneth Grant makes the play after Brumfield ran out of options. 2nd down and 14 at the 25. And it seems as though Brennan Marion and the UNLV offense are trying as hard as they can to move the offense around so that Brumfield isn't just a sitting duck in the pocket, because it seems like they recognize their tackles have been overmatched in this game. And Brumfield is getting pressured almost as soon as he drops back. Trips formation to the left. 1 running back in the backfield for Brumfield. Finds a man, it's DeJesus once again, cuts upfield. DeJesus made a 15-yard grab on the last drive, first play of the game. This time works it all the way up to a 3rd down and 3 for UNLV, up to the 36, gain of 11 for DeJesus. He's made a number of plays out of the slot for the Runnin' Rebels. Another 3rd down for UNLV, but this time it's a bit shorter than the last couple. We've been used to seeing them in 3rd down and 13s. This time it's a 3rd down and 3. The crowd getting into it. 6:42 to go in the second quarter. Michigan up 14-0. 3rd down and 3 from UNLV from their own 36. Brumfield in the gun. 2 wide receivers right, 1 to the left. Brumfield, straight drop back. Got a man. 1st down to DeJesus once again. Dragged to the ground by Mike Barrett, but not before he picked up the 4 yards necessary to move the chains. Ball now at the 41-yard line. We see that quad wide receiver set to the right. Brumfield, screen set up. Throws outside, has his man Seneca McKee. DeJesus, excuse me, once again getting a lot of work in this passing game. Picks up 8 yards to the 49-yard line, 2nd down and 2, UNLV. And the Rebels are going to come out in the Wildcat. Brumfield, actually no, he's just motioning to the coaching staff to get the play called directly from Brennan Marion. Comes back to the huddle. I thought he was going to go out wide for a kind of Wildcat formation with a running back taking the snap under center, but Brumfield comes out. Stack backfield look to the left. 2 running backs to Brumfield's left. 2 wide receivers also. Brumfield, play fake. Rolling left, hit again, he's sacked. Chris Jenkins and Kenny Grant again in the backfield make for a dangerous combination. 3rd down and 9. Brumfield having no time to set up and throw. He wanted a receiver deep, but Grant and Jenkins getting in the backfield before that throw was made. Another 3rd down and long for UNLV. Crowd getting very loud once again for another 3rd down. Brumfield with Thomas to the left of him. 2 wide receivers right. Brumfield in the normal shotgun formation. Takes the snap, drops back, looks, throws, has it complete. Beautiful pitch and catch made as the football is actually knocked away incomplete. It was DeJesus again out wide right. We'll see the replay. He had that ball in his hands. A nice throw made by Brumfield and jarred free by Mike Stainrestill. Great play made by Stainrestill from the outside corner position. Forces another punt for UNLV. And Michigan getting off the field once again, forcing a 3rd down and long and not allowing the Runnin Rebels to convert. Nichols, a higher punt this time, catchable for Thaw. Little bit of traffic, but he makes the fair catch at the 16-yard line of Michigan. That's where the Wolverines will take over with 4:30 remaining in the second quarter, up 14-0.
And as you said earlier, that was a great coverage by Mikey Sanderson, especially after his interception last game. And you can also just speak to the hard work and the concentration of this defense after they've had a couple of rough plays, coming back, getting a sack, making sure that everyone is reading the scheme and staying in their pocket and staying with their man.
And Mikey Sainrestill is a guy, you talk about the defense overall working hard today, but Sainrestill coming in to Ann Arbor as a wide receiver, hadn't played cornerback since high school, made that transition last year, almost exclusively a nickel cornerback last season. This time playing a bit outside, getting that experience as a veteran corner now on this Michigan football team. Makes a beautiful play onto Jesus, who has been hot in the passing game for UNLV, to jar that football loose and force the Rebels off the field. Sainrestill has just worked so hard at the cornerback position. He's given everything that Michigan has asked of him, and he will surely be rewarded in the NFL draft after it's been said that he heard back that NFL teams wanted a bit more experience for him at the outside cornerback position, not just in the slot, and he's getting that this season following DJ Turner's exit for the NFL. 90 seconds left on this media timeout with 4:30 left to go in the second quarter. Michigan's going to have the ball at their own 16 for a 1st and 10, their 4th drive of the game. Last drive ending in an anticlimactic 4th down and 2 stuff by the UNLV defense that set up their last possession. Blake Corum, it was a straight give up the middle from the shotgun, and virtually no push from the Michigan line up front. UNLV made a great stand, got the football back, and really just a bigger thing was to limit Michigan from scoring again. That offense looked like it was going to be rolling throughout the second quarter of this game. Of this game.
And you can kind of see on both sides, Michigan and UNLV, the intelligence it takes to just update their schemes, make sure that they're reading the plays as it goes on. At first, we thought that UNLV was kind of getting pushed back by Michigan's defense, and they started to figure it out, and we can see if Michigan's defense and Michigan's offense can have a callback going into this next little section of the second quarter.
Michigan's offense coming back out on the field, but I just want to say one last thing about Michigan's defensive effort. Brennan Marion describes the go-go offense as a 2-back power run vertical shot team. Michigan's defense has kept everything in front of them. The pass completions that have been happening have not been backbreakers. Brumfield has looked deep on a few plays, but the pressure has been too much for him. Michigan's defense really limiting this exotic go-go offense. J.J. McCarthy is going to come out in the straight I formation with Max Bredesen behind him, Blake Corum, the tailback. Bredesen moves to a strong I position. McCarthy, nice throw over the middle of Cornelius Johnson, makes the grab at the 35, tackle down at the 36.5-yard line. They'll say he was down at the 35. In any event, it's a 1st down and 10 Michigan. And a nice throw made by McCarthy after the play fake in the I formation, taking a page out of the Detroit Lions playbook. A beautiful play action fake. We see that all the time from Jared Goff. We saw that on Thursday. The big Lions victory. McCarthy in the shotgun, fakes the snap a few times, straight drop back. McCarthy looks, fires left, deep shot down the field, and too short for his intended receiver, Frederick Moore, on the left sideline. That pass falls incomplete, 2nd down and 10. That was McCarthy's first incompletion of the ball game. He went 13 for 13 to start this game for 149 yards. That time just too short for Frederick Moore. I don't know if he wanted the freshman to come back on that football. It was a miscommunication where Moore thought it was a go route. 2nd down and 10. Corum gets a straight give. Bounces off a tackle attempt by Tatuo Martinson. Works back past the line of scrimmage for a gain of 2 or 3. 3rd down and 7 for Michigan at their own 38. McCarthy is going to break his huddle for another 3rd down and medium. This Michigan offense has been efficient on those, except for the one that led to a 4th down stuff. This time McCarthy comes out empty. We'll see if a running back comes into the backfield. They show empty, and Edwards comes back to be in the backfield to the right of McCarthy. 3 wide receivers split left. McCarthy drops back, dumps off Edwards. Edwards makes a cut, 1st down and more, up to the 48-yard line of UNLV. Big gain from Donovan Edwards. He is an explosive back in space, and the Wolverines get him involved in the receiving game to pick up the 1st.
And the offensive line did a great job of giving JJ enough time to find Donovan.
And Edwards just too quick for the junior captain linebacker of this UNLV defense, Jackson Woodard. Escapes his attempted tackle. Picks up the 1st down. McCarthy now in the pistol. Gives right side to Corum, who is stacked up at the 45-yard line. Gain of 2, 2nd down and 8. Wolverines stay in the pistol now. Edwards behind McCarthy on 2nd down and 8. 2 wide receivers left, 2 tight ends to the right of the offensive line. McCarthy, play fake left to Edwards. Looks, finds Edwards on the dump off, and Donovan is tackled at the 43-yard line for a gain of 2, 3rd down and 6 at the 43. When I talked about Michigan's defense keeping everything in front of them, not allowing the big play, UNLV's defense has done a tremendous job at that too, not really letting the Michigan receivers get deep. We saw in a few of the non-conference games last season that Michigan's wide receivers were able to bust coverage and go deep, catch some go balls, but the Runnin' Rebels defense is making Michigan work for every single yard in this ball game. McCarthy from the gun, drops back, finds a man, right side, Tyler Morris, picks up another 1st down. Tyler Morris's third down reception of the ball game that results in a 1st down. He has been J.J. McCarthy's favorite safety blanket in this game. Wolverines move fast after a nice play to pick up the 1st. McCarthy's in the gun, 4 wide receivers, 2 left, 2 right. Edwards to the left of J.J. Straight drop back. J.J. moves up in the pocket, looks to run with it, can't find a receiver. J.J. towards the near sideline. Picks up 7 yards to the 27, 2nd down and 3. And a leisurely walk around. McCarthy, nice job by Miles Hinton on the outside, getting that edge rusher to move outside of McCarthy, allow him to get to the right side of the pocket and burst out towards the sideline. Three wide receivers to the left. McCarthy back in the shotgun. Edwards to the right. McCarthy, design quarterback draw. Up the middle, McCarthy breaks a tackle. Down inside the 15 to the 13-yard line of UNLV. Great design QB run, and McCarthy has been showing off with his legs. 3rd carry, he's got 24 yards on the ground. Timeout Michigan as we ticked out at 27 seconds remaining in the 2nd quarter. After that big 3rd down with about 4 minutes remaining in the 2nd quarter, Michigan has led this clock all the way into a spot where UNLV will not have another shot to touch the football, barring something disastrous for Michigan. Put 28 seconds on the game clock now, and Michigan down at the 13-yard line. There's a lot of things you can do with 2 timeouts remaining. And they've shown to be multiple in this game. Spreading the ball around to a number of receivers has McCarthy done. 16 of 17, 175 yards through the air. 3 carries for 38 yards on the ground. And JJ has shown everything that he can today, that he is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Maybe not explosive as some of the guys garnering Heisman conversation, but with how efficient McCarthy has been, when other quarterbacks have a tough time completing close to 60% of their passes. JJ only 4 incompletions in the game last week, only 1 so far in the first half today. On those 16 completions, JJ has found 7 different receivers. Only Cornelius Johnson and Tyler Morris have more than a pair of catches. They each have 3 for around 40 yards. Just over a minute to go in this most likely to be last timeout of the first half, last media timeout of the first half. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's a bit of a jinx. We're moving through this game at a fine pace. Kicked off at 3:30, 4:47 now. I'm used to these CBS broadcasts going 4 hours when the SEC used to play in this 3:30 time slot. Used to having dinner at 7:30 by the time whatever Alabama game would be over. Now it's Michigan UNLV. Runnin Rebel defense breaks the huddle. Michigan soon to follow. 28 seconds to go in the second quarter. Michigan at the 13 after the design quarterback run by McCarthy gains them nearly 14 yards. Looks like JJ's going to come out in the empty set once again, but we'll see for the third time if they move a running back into the backfield. For now, Donovan Edwards is split out wide right. 5 wide receivers, if you include Loveland in that count for McCarthy. Loveland off the line of scrimmage in the slot as a tight end. Waiting for the ready for play signal. The Wolverines get it. McCarthy will stay in the empty set. Couple fake claps, now he gets the ball. JJ drops back, got a man, caught inside the 5, touchdown Roman Wilson. Great cut up field by Roman. Nobody touches him until he gets to pay dirt. Roman Wilson with his 4th touchdown in the season after his 3 touchdown effort last week. Michigan goes up 20-0 pending the extra point with 24 seconds to go in the second quarter. James Turner on for his 3rd extra point today. Hold by Tommy Doman, snap by William Wagner. Kick is up and good. Michigan up 21-0 with 24 seconds to go in the second. 280 yards for the Michigan offense in the first half, and how efficient has J.J. McCarthy been? 17 of 18, 188 yards and a touchdown. Michigan goes 10 plays, 83 yards in 4 minutes and 6 seconds, marching the football down the field after starting at their own 17. 3rd touchdown of the game. That was Roman Wilson's 3rd catch of the ball game, now at 42 yards receiving. Picks up that touchdown grab for his 4th this season. Michigan offense back to humming at all cylinders after being forced off the field on a turnover on downs their last drive out. Tommy Doman set to kick off for the 4th time in this first half. Runs up to the football, makes contact, and sends it out the back of the end zone for yet another touchback. Player down on the field for Michigan, it looks like Cornelius Johnson, maybe Brandon Hillman, the freshman defensive back. He was down on the field for a moment, gets back up just fine.
I think Michigan's done a great job of controlling the clock, running this game at their own pace, and limiting the opportunities UNLV has to retaliate after these very long, explosive plays.
We'll see what UNLV does with 24 seconds with which to work. Not much you can do other than a big shot play, and I wouldn't expect them to do some kind of hook and ladder in the first half. Down 21-0, you don't want to make that worse. They'll just give a straight handoff inside. Looks like they're going to run the clock out. That was Donovan Lester once again. And UNLV in no rush to get the next play off. Looks like we're just going to go to halftime. Michigan with a 21-0 lead. Clock ticks down on this first half. Beautiful game so far for J.J. McCarthy. 2 touchdowns for Blake Corum. And the Michigan rush defense powered by a number of sacks. Negative 18 rushing yards overall for UNLV as a team. 42 total yards in the first half. Michigan doing wonders on defense once again. It's the defense we've expected all season. And it's the rushing attack that we missed in the East Carolina game. Maybe not as effective as we'd like to see it. With the passing game hitting all cylinders, it has been a complete team effort for Michigan so far in this ball game to go up 21-0. And Simone, your thoughts before we pass it over and I step away for Vihaan Easwar in the second half to get to go. You guys are going to be able to talk about the different scores around the league we saw, but any last thoughts that you want to talk about before I head off air?
I think Michigan did a great job of adjusting from last game on both offense and defense, giving themselves an opportunity to learn from their mistakes and also hone in on their strengths, which is our passing game has gotten a lot better and also our running game. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do coming out of, this half.
Definitely, and I thank you for joining me for this first half. It was very exciting to call. 3 touchdowns, a 16 for 17 half from J.J. McCarthy. I've been William Gregory. I'm going to hand off my headset to Vihaan Easwar for the WCBN YouTube halftime show. Shai Dweck, who was on the pregame show, will join Vihaan for the call of the second half. Thanks for letting me be on, you guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I know you heard a bit from me before the game started. I'm Vihaan Easwar, and this is Simone Roberts, and we're going to bring you the halftime show before we lead into the second half. It's been a great first half. There's a lot to like, specifically from one man who we'll get to in a bit. But on the whole, Simone, you were on the call. Just give me the rundown of what you saw from this half.
I saw a lot of things on both sides of the ball, both teams. Michigan, of course, their offensive line coming out here again and making sure that JJ had enough time in the pocket just to find those runners and find those wide receivers and tight ends, which they had a little bit of trouble doing last week. And also on the defensive side, they finally got some sacks in and just focused on also getting that pressure, and then also having a team camaraderie and team effort to make sure if one man missed a block, the next person was right there to get it. And then UNLV on the other side, their defense adjusted very well, but Michigan, it's very hard to beat. So,
and I think one of the reasons why Michigan is so hard to beat is because of number 9 himself, the boy wonder, J.J. McCarthy, with one of the most efficient halves that I've seen from any quarterback, both college and NFL, in a while. McCarthy hardly put a step wrong. His reads were accurate. He was making throws into tough pockets. He was able to use his feet. His throws were powerful, but didn't overthrow his receivers. Honestly, I can't find a single negative from his game. This man looks significantly improved from last year, and he was very good last year. He legitimately looks like a potential Heisman Trophy winner, a potentially solid to good NFL starter. I know, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a little early, but we've seen there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like here, and yeah. Simone, do you have any other thoughts on McCarthy and his game?
I think it's just really impressive to see McCarthy's evolution, especially being much younger last season, coming in as a starter and coming and seeing his evolution and being patient and waiting, and then also just having this great communication with the team, his offensive line, and his receivers and tight ends, and especially with these new transfers coming in is really important to have that team chemistry, and you can really see it coming in out of this first half. So that's going to be really important going forward in the season. So I say he's doing a great job, and let's just see what he can continue to do.
Yeah, and there's two other big storylines that I noticed from the first half that carried on from the last game that that we talked about earlier. Now, I think a big worry that a lot of people had going into this game was Michigan's pass rush, which, as I mentioned in the intro, Michigan's players had worryingly low sack totals this year. But today we saw quite a solid pass rush, able to force significant pressure on Brumsfield and significantly limit his dynamicism, which we mentioned was a big part of his game. How do you feel about the improvement of the pass rush? I think we're all excited about it, but do you have any other specific thoughts on it?
I think it was just they did a great job of spreading it around. I mean, obviously we saw last season how dominant this defense can be with Chris Jenkins leading the way. And then even this game with Jalen Harrell, who just did a fantastic job of getting that pressure, but also getting those sacks in. And then we also had some of the younger guys with Kenneth Grant, Mason, who came in and just did their job, made sure there was pressure, and didn't give the quarterback any time to find those people down the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big storyline is Michigan's run game, which last season, arguably the best in college football. We saw not as much of it as we might have liked against East Carolina, but today we saw the resurgence of Blake Corum getting himself a touchdown, making those runs, making those movements like he used to. This looks like the Blake of old, and it's hard not to get excited about it. What are your thoughts on Blake's half?
I think Blake is finding his way, and especially after coming off of that injury last season, and we did see, a potential like Heisman season, and just making sure that there's a good balance between him and Donovan, who are both very dominant, and Michigan has a great running back core. So it's going to be really important to just see Blake build his run game and just build that passing game as well, and make sure he can get those bulls at ball security and be as explosive as possible like he was last season.
Yeah, and we haven't seen much of Donovan Edwards so far in this half, but I personally feel that as we potentially move towards some substitutions, which we'll get to in a bit, we're going to see a little more action from Edwards, as I presume Harbaugh wants to avoid severely wearing out Corum after the injury that he sustained last year. I'm definitely excited to see a lot more Donovan Edwards in the second half, and yeah, I really think there's a lot to like from this first half. I think we're going to see more to come in the second half. I think a little more nuanced game plan, which leads me into my next point. How do you think the coaching staff is going to attack the second half now that Michigan has built a healthy lead? Do you think it's time to start pulling some substitutes, or would you still like to see the starters in action?
I think it'll be really interesting to see, especially with Mike Hart calling the second half of the game, especially knowing all of the younger running backs that we have, and we also saw some younger wide receivers. So there could be a lot of substitutions just to test out that depth chart and give some of our starters a little bit of a break, especially with this 21-0 lead, just to see if Michigan can extend that lead going forward into the rest of the season as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do on, both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. Defense also has some depth that we got to see a little bit of with some of our old starters last season and some of the new guys who transferred in.
Yeah. And we're going to take a quick deviation away from Michigan, if that's okay with you. And we're going to talk about some other storylines in the world of college football that are occurring right now. So as of right now, we are in the fourth quarter of the Charleston-Clemson game. Number 25 Clemson is leading 52-17. Healthy beatdown. I think that's fairly expected from one of college football's blue bloods. Mississippi and Tulane, close game. Number 20 Mississippi, 10. Number 24 Tulane at 17. That's a bit of an upset, not a huge one, but it's halftime. As we are currently mentioning, UNLV is down 21-0 to number 2 Michigan. And number 23 Texas A&M, 17-7 over the Michigan Wolverines in the second quarter of that game. Yeah, that's just our quick recap. Is there anything specific you'd like to say about any of those games?
No, I think a lot of these games are going almost exactly the way that we thought, at least this early on in the season. So it's going to be a little bit interesting when we see some of those more exciting games, especially after next week, once everybody starts to hit conference. But this is the part of the season where you really get to see people try out new schemes. They get to feel out their players, especially when you have new, younger players, or you have older returning players who just are trying to find and adjust to get to that next level, which is hopefully the NFL, but also championship. So this is that point in the season where coaches and teams need to hone in and focus and not take advantage of playing these teams that are not in conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say that's similar to what we're seeing with Michigan right now? You know, you see the multiple coaches using Harbaugh suspension and the fact that they're currently playing to unranked non-conference opponents as a chance to rotate. I think we might see some of that with the substitutions. You know, it's very similar to what Michigan is doing right now, and it is an exciting time if you're a fan of football, either NFL or college football. If you're a college football fan, you'll see some of the traditional powerhouses maybe run up the score a couple of times, but you'll get to see some of your favorite players, some of your favorite coaches in action. If you're an NFL fan, it's a good time to start seeing, you know, who your team might be thinking of drafting, who's going to shoot up those draft boards, who's plummeting down those draft boards. It's a great time to be a football fan. It's a great time to be a sports fan. It's a great time to be at the Big House, as we are right now, witnessing the, as always, magnificent halftime show presented by the Michigan Marching Band. Yeah. So, what are some things that you would like to see the Wolverines do in the second half that you didn't think they did particularly well in the first?
I think consistency is important. We started to see a little bit of that as the half started to end. As we mentioned previously, there was a little bit of playing around with plays and designs, and I think it's important to figure out what their bread and butter is, but also figure out how they can jazz that up a little bit, especially once you go against these teams who have dominant defenses or teams that have dominant offenses, and finding what works for them and what can lead them to the ultimate goal of a national championship and another Big Ten championship win. So that's going to be really important. I would love to see that consistency. I would love to see the defense, you know, continue to stay focused and concentrated, getting more sacks, getting that pressure, and not giving UNLV's QB enough time to find those receivers and to contain those running backs.
Yeah, for me, I've really enjoyed seeing the resurgence of the run game, but I would like to see JJ get to the receivers a little more. That's something that I think has been missing, and I think we'll attribute that to UNLV. Despite the lopsided score, they have played quite a good game on defense. I would really like to see JJ find his receivers more. You know, I'd love to see, because, you know, JJ is working with somewhat of a new receiving core after losing Ronnie Bell to the NFL last season. And in the past, we have seen, as I said this in the pregame show, we have seen star college football quarterbacks see their stocks plummet after losing key offensive weapons, like Sam Howell with UNC a couple of seasons ago. So it'll be interesting to see, can JJ build that same chemistry with this group of receivers that he had last year that worked so well for 14 straight games? Personally, I think, yes, it's possible, but I think JJ needs to throw the ball a little more for that. I'd also love to see Donovan Edwards more involved in the game. He was a major bright spot last year, even playing behind Corum during Corum's stretch of the season where it looked like he was going to win the Heisman pre-injury. Edwards still managed to get those reps. He still managed to shine. And I'm really excited to see what he could do this half. I personally do think burning out running backs and using them snap after snap is a very bad idea, which is why I'd like to see a little bit of rest for Corum. Still like to see him be involved in the game, because I also don't think it's a great strategy to be pulling out your players in the first half, leaving them rusty for some of your big-ticket matchups. But at the same time, I do think, yeah, maybe he shouldn't be an option on every run play. I'd like to see him get a couple pass plays in. Speaking of the passing game, one player who I'd like to see involved a little more is Colson Loveland. I'm a big fan of tight ends, and I just love to see Loveland work more into the game. He hasn't quite had the impact that I would have liked to see him see, but I think part of that is UNLV really neutralizing Michigan's passing game. In spite of that, we've still seen incredible efficiency from McCarthy. I believe at some point his stat line was 16 to 17. Forgive me for not immediately being up to date on that particular stat, but yeah, incredible efficiency from McCarthy, great accuracy. I think that's the go-to that I'm drawing for this half.
I think going off of that, you also see this is not as dominant by Colson because they also do have the transfer in from Indiana, A.J. Barner, who is also a fantastic tight end, which is going to be very important, having two big, like very strong tight ends that, you know, can block when they need to and also give those wide receivers a break if they cannot get open, which is something that is going to be important, especially on these plays where, you know, defense is very, very tough. Something I would love for Michigan to continue to do is get as many touches with those wide receivers as possible. We've already seen like at least 3 or 4 different wide receivers get a touch, and some of them having amazing plays like Roman Wilson again, and then also We have Cornelius Johnson, too, who is having a great game. So I think it's really important to spread it out, give them some time to rest. Same thing that they need to do with the running backs, especially with that deep of a core. Giving more time to Donovan and trying to get those plays where we know he's like a rocket and he can just get through. So that's going to be important going to the second half into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think we have gone over a lot of the key points for this Michigan Wolverines team going into the second half. This isn't a super complicated matchup. Going in, I think the Wolverines knew that this would be a victory, although it's good to see them not get complacent, and I really hope that they don't get complacent. UNLV, as we said, had a great performance last week. And on topic of UNLV, much have been made of the dynamicism and explosiveness of quarterback Doug Brumsfield. And I think the Wolverines have done a great job of neutralizing his ability to really scramble and make those plays on his feet by constantly putting the pressure on him. That's something that I was a little nervous about. I was worried that, thinking of how Michigan's pass rush had not been up to par in recent memory and even last season, the Wolverines would struggle and give him a lot of time. But at the same time, he hasn't really had it that way. He's had to throw the ball quickly. A contrast to JJ, who I've noticed has had a lot of time to release the ball. Again, the Wolverines' offensive line has been fantastic today. It's consistently been one of the high points of the program, and even with some new faces in there, that standard of consistency has been maintained. And I think it's important to any program, both collegiate or professional, to build that offensive line, because that's the backbone of your team, the backbone of your offense.
I agree. I think especially after the Michigan offensive line winning the Joe Moore Award twice in a row. And, you know, you can tell that they're definitely trying to win it again this year, which is going to be very important. You know, if you can get your QB enough time to get those plays, then you have all the time in the world to get down the field, make big plays, but also be efficient and control the clock as much as possible. And like you said earlier, I think Michigan's defense has done a great job of containing UNLV's QB. We've seen a little bit of his athleticism with him running away from defenders. They've done a great job of neutralizing him and holding him in the pocket or making him panic a little bit, which we've seen in a couple of plays, which have led to some negative yardage from UNLV's offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing the team have fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the Big House have fun. It's always a great place to be. And yeah, any other thoughts on what's happening in the world of college football since we still have some time? I know NFL and collegiate legend Deion Sanders' run at Colorado has made headline news as they improved to 2-0 earlier today against favored Nebraska. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think a lot of people, you know, want to see him not succeed. And I think it's a little bit of exciting, and it's a little bit, you know, brings some excitement to college football, especially a program like Colorado who has not had the most success in the past couple of years. And especially with their win against Nebraska going 2-0, this is something that teams need to be aware of. They can't count Colorado out anymore, and they can't just say that it's because of their new coaching staff, because those players on that team are, as we've seen, fantastic, and they are beasts, and they are ready to show the world of college football that they can be contenders and that they can be successful in this world.
Do you think there's potential for this to be a TCU-esque Cinderella story that potentially results in a playoff appearance? I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's always fun to be speculative.
I think if they can keep the progress that they have, and if they can keep the chemistry and give their important players, their key stars, the time that they need, and having the QB that they have, I think it could potentially be, especially, you know, going 2-0. But I mean, once we hit those bigger teams later on in their schedule, we'll see what they can do, and we can see if they're going to be able to succeed and hold up to the standards that people are putting them on right now.
Yes, and as we all know, the college football playoff system is extremely difficult to crack. A lot of it relies on consistency. If you lose 2 or 3 games, there's a decent chance you aren't seeing the playoffs, especially in teams like Colorado, which are not necessarily in a very strong conference like the Big Ten, which is a factor that matters a lot to the AP. And it tends to be teams that have had like a structure and leadership in place that has the consistency to grind out a potential undefeated or only a few losses season. And you have to wonder, maybe will it take a year or 2 for this Colorado program to really materialize and manage to chain together those wins? Of course, miracles can happen, but to me, I think consistency is something that comes with experience, and maybe this Colorado team just doesn't have the experience. Whatever the case is, Deion Sanders is someone who, yeah, a lot of people might be rooting against him, but he's also a very popular figure. A lot of people, myself included, are rooting for him. And it'll just be interesting to see what they can do. And, yeah. So the players are coming back out on the field for their warm-ups. The marching band has taken their place back in the stands. We are getting ready to, and we are very excited to bring you some more Michigan football second half action. It's always a pleasure to spend our Saturday mornings or afternoons or nights with you, bringing you action from the best arena in the world, from the best college football team in the world.
And this was Simone Roberts. I've just been having the best time up here, and especially helping to call the first half. And I'm going to pass it off to my two wonderful people here who are going to help call this and analyze the rest of this Michigan game. And so it's been a great time. Let's see some more wonderful football.
Don't go anywhere, folks. In just under 2.5 minutes, we will be bringing you the second half of Michigan football here at Michigan Stadium. Go Blue! And just under 2 minutes to go. We are lining up in formation. UNLV has taken the field again.
I'm Shai, Dweck, thrilled to be joining Vihaan, Easwar for the second half coverage of today's game. Michigan currently leads UNLV 21-0 entering the third quarter. Vihaan, what did you like about what you saw just in the next 2 minutes before we reach kickoff?
I waxed poetic about it during the kickoff show, during the halftime show, but I just can't say enough. J.J. McCarthy has been nothing short of phenomenal today. His efficiency, his decision-making, his throw power, his ability to move on his feet. This man has played like a Heisman winner today. I know it's not necessarily the toughest opposition, and I know it's only one half, but you like to see things like this, especially from a young quarterback, only in his second full season as a starter. I'm just thrilled to see what this man will do in the second half. Assuming we see a lot of him in the second half, there's a possibility that Michigan starts bringing on the substitutes.
Absolutely, especially when you consider that J.J. McCarthy's been running a little bit. We had that designed quarterback drop around 14 yards to set up the Roman Wilson touchdown to make it 21-0. And even that scramble on the read option to set up Blake Corum's second touchdown. J.J. McCarthy has looked good as both a runner and a passer, but he has taken some hits. So I'm sure the Michigan offensive coaching staff will want to monitor that and, limit his exposure to injury, so to speak, in the second half, although I'm sure we will see him for a decent portion of the third quarter. And it looks like we are getting ready for kickoff in the second half. It will be Jose Pisano to send it off for us. And Michigan will receive the kick. Hand is up. And we're off to the second half of Michigan UNLV. Here's the return. And he's got space and tackled at the 31-yard line.
I am very excited to see this drive from Michigan. I think this one might actually set the tone for what's going to happen in the rest of the game. Are you going to see Michigan be a little aggressive with it on the ground? Are we going to see them try and work on the passing game, which maybe wasn't as explosive and volatile as it usually is? Or are we just going to see them ground and pound and try and bring this game to an early end so they can get ready and focus on next week's matchup with Bowling Green?
And I expect we'll see plenty of the run as we expect Michigan to put this game on ice in the second half. J.J. McCarthy will take the snap out of the shotgun here. Motion man is Donovan Edwards. He'll give it. J.J. will keep it. Throwing to Edwards, and he gets maybe one or two on the little pitch and catch. Maybe a screen play that UNLV just blew up for a 1 or 2 yard gain. And we saw another runner that we don't usually see on the kick return team. Khalil Mullings taking it out to the 30 and a pretty good return to set Michigan up. It'll be 2nd and 10, ball on the 33-yard line from McCarthy in the Wolverine offense. JJ will fake. Here's a snap. And it's a give to Corum for about a gain of 4. It'll be 3rd and 2 from just shy of the 40-yard line. We have a UNLV player down. Looks like it's number 8 defensive tackle Darius Johnson, if I can see that correctly. And they'll attend to him here. Vihaan, we expect to see more of the running game, but you mentioned JJ looked crisp, only 1 incompletion. And what I loved particularly about this Michigan offense is their ability to work the way down the field, calm, collected, methodical is the word perhaps. 190 yards for McCarthy and a touchdown, and more holes in the running game for Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. 97 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first half on the ground.
Absolutely, yes. And we mentioned that the run game was a bit of a deficiency against East Carolina last week. And I mentioned in my pregame notes that it could just be that coaching staff was easing Corum back into battle. I think he's battle ready. He certainly looks it. And I personally do think that we're going to see a little less Corum and a little more Donovan Edwards this half. At least I think that would be the smart decision. Don't ease Corum back from his injury too quickly, and let's also give some attention to another one of the most explosive and dynamic running backs in college football.
I think that's a great point, and we were able to see both Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum involved in the receiving game. Donovan Edwards had 4 catches in the first half, Blake Corum with 2. One of them was a nice 20-yard catch on the first drive. But what I've really liked about what J.J. McCarthy has done, and I know we've talked about him a lot, but it's hard not to with his play, just the anticipation. These are pro-level throws, threading the needle, dots, if you will, between linebackers into zone coverage. We saw him hit Cornelius Johnson on an out route and on an in route several times in the first half, as well as Roman Wilson. He's spreading the ball around to 7 different receivers. Everyone's feeding today.
Yes, absolutely. And there are some throws where you just thought, okay, this is surely going to be picked off or an incompletion, but it just found the receiver in a very difficult route or a very difficult position. And like you said, the confidence, the decision-making, the way this Michigan team just marches down the field, sometimes they feel like an NFL offense.
Absolutely. And you've got to really like how this offensive line has started to really gel here in this game 2 against UNLV. You have 3 returning starters in the offensive line, and Carson Barnhart, left tackle, Trevor Keegan, left guard, Zach Zenter, right guard. But you have 2 new starters as well, in center Drake Nugent and transfer from Stanford, Miles Hinton. And even those substitutes of 2 starters coming in here, they have looked a lot better in the first half of this game and allowed for the holes in the running game to open up more.
Yes. And one particular player on the offense who I'd like to see more involved, which I mentioned earlier, tight end Colton Loveland. I'm a big tight end guy, but I love my tight ends, and I'd love to see how they incorporate Loveland into the passing game this year. It's, as I mentioned, it's going to be very interesting to see how McCarthy works with his new offensive staff after a bit of a shakeup from last year.
And I'm sure he will get Loveland more involved. Now McCarthy will come back on the field as the Wolverines will resume their drive. Hopefully the UNLV player down is okay and getting the medical attention he needs. A.J. Barner will be in motion. McCarthy will take the snap out of the shotgun. He looks, he'll throw, and it's batted down at the line of scrimmage. We don't see that happen very, very often. And it'll be 2nd and 10. Looked like he was targeting Roman Wilson over the middle of the field.
And yeah, we have seen the Rebels put some pressure on the Wolverines' offensive line and McCarthy, and I would personally chalk this up to the fact that this is a new offensive line with 3 new starters who are just learning to gel together, learning to play with each other. Offensive line is one of those positional groups where need that kind of positional camaraderie.
Excuse me, now it's 4th down, and the punt will be sent away by Tommy Doman and hit immediately. Great coverage in the special teams. Jacob Jesus taken down immediately at around the 15-yard line. Now, Doug Brumfield and the UNLV offense will try to get something going in the first half, in the second half. In the first half, fairly quiet. He went 7 for 10, 58 yards. Of course, no touchdown. They remained scoreless, and the running game was non-existent. 12 attempts, negative 16 yards on the ground. This Michigan interior defense has been absolutely swarming. And here is Brumfield. He'll look to throw, trying to step up. He can run, and he's tackled after a short gain of around 2 or 3 yards by Junior Colson, racking up another tackle. And they'll look to go quickly here. Brumfield getting his guys to the line again, not letting Michigan get in their substitutions, it seems. Brumfield, and this time he'll hand it off. Looks like Donovan Lester for a gain of 1. Nothing there. And it'll be 3rd and 4 from around the the UNLV 26, UNLV 22-yard line.
And I think you're going to see a little more urgency from UNLV on their drives because they're aware this is a Michigan team with one of the best run games in college football. This is a team with potential to run down the clock.
Absolutely, Vihaan. Now we'll see an empty set from Brumfield. 5 wide receivers. Brumfield, he'll look to take off and cannot get away. Looks like that's 55. Mason Graham taking him down, not letting him step up in the pocket and run, because if he didn't, Brumfield had space, Vihaan. And now the Michigan offense will look to get back on the field after a good defensive stand, not giving up anything here to start this second half.
And the urgency I mentioned is visible here when you see UNLV going forward on 4th and 2. No, they're going to punt.
We'll see the punt. Here's Jake Thaw coming back. Nice booming kick. And Thaw will have some space to work. He's still going and tackled at the 36-yard line. A nice return from Jake Thaw. Yeah, you would have thought that maybe UNLV would have considered going for it in that spot. Although it is in your own territory, it's a 4th and 2? And at this point in the game, being down 21-0 against a potent offense that's flexed their muscles in the first half in Michigan, you'd expect you want to get on the board, keep the drive alive, gain some momentum, but to our surprise, they punt. Jake Thaw makes a good return on it.
Yeah, and I definitely think it might have served them some value to go for it because even if that drive doesn't result in something, it buys them just a bit more time. Instead, you hand the ball off to the Wolverines, who with their potent two-headed monster in the backfield can keep getting seconds off the clock. And there's only so many timeouts that you can use to stop them before they leave you at the very end of the game in a difficult position to come back from.
Absolutely. And now, what do you think, Vihaan, was said at halftime between these two sides? I always think it's fun to go into the locker room, play head coach for a second. Let's start with UNLV. You're not able to get a lot done in the first half. You have a little bit of a drive going into the midfield before Michigan scores their 3rd touchdown, where Brumfield's able to connect with Jacob Jesus making some run after catch. But other than that, completely quiet. What do you do to change things up if you're UNLV, Vihaan?
Well, I think it's a very angry locker room at halftime. I think we can expect a decent amount of
a lot of yelling and screaming, water bottles being thrown, that type of thing.
Locker doors being slammed. But I think most importantly, the issue is UNLV needs to look for space to exploit because this is a team that thrives in opening up gaps, getting yards on the ground. I think that's what they needed to focus on, especially since the Wolverines would immediately come out and just lock them down. You saw Jalen Harrell in particular, who was on those tackles, on those key stops. I think that's definitely what was said in the UNLV locker room. And do you want to take a gander at what was said in the Wolverines locker room?
I think they're going to try to assert themselves on the ground. We've seen a little bit more of the passing than I would have thought so far in this second half. But I think what's got to be said with Mike Hart, the running backs coach of all people, taking over to coach the second half, they want to assert their dominance, put this game on ice with the ground and pound. And what will be particularly interesting is whether or not we can see some of the Other offensive linemen getting into the game. Greg Crippen, perhaps, at backup center getting in, young guy, or Ladarius Henderson at left tackle. Those are some guys that Michigan is excited about on the offensive line, but there's only 5 starters, so you're going to have some key reserves, and we may get to see them play a little bit in the second half. Now, Michigan offense will come back from timeout, and let's see what they can do with this drive. There's around 12 minutes to go in the third quarter. McCarthy looks like we'll have a shotgun opportunity to start. And ref's holding up play. Okay, now here we go. 2 receivers to the left, tight end to the right. McCarthy gets the snap, looks to throw. He's got a man. It's Cornelius Johnson on the little hook and curl, and he's taken out of bounds right before the 50-yard line, and a Michigan first down. They're still throwing it, Vihaan.
Yeah, and I think that's a little. Is that a bit of a surprise to you? Because I would think the Wolverines want this game to be over soon, so they can just go into game planning for their next week with this game essentially in a very good position. You'd think we'd see a lot more running.
Absolutely. But I think, part of the reason why they could be throwing so much is because they want to show that they have the capability to do this early in the season. McCarthy will take the snap under center. He'll give it to Corum, and he's taken down after a gain of about 4 or 5. Looks like it was number 5, Cameron Oliver, coming in from his corner spot to make the tackle. What I will say about this UNLV defense, they have given up 21 points in this game, but the tackling has been fairly sound, particularly in the open field. We're not seeing a ton of explosive runs, but effective runs from the Michigan running game.
Yeah, this has been a not super exciting, but very quietly efficient performance from Michigan so far.
McCarthy looks to throw. He'll wind and connect with Roman Wilson. He's got space. It's a foot race touchdown, Michigan.
That is a beautiful throw, beautiful run, exactly like what we want to see.
And that's the speed of Roman Wilson on full display. It's a crosser route going right in between the 30 and 20-yard lines. He catches it and just runs away from the defender down the sideline. The safety cannot get there. Textbook pitch and catch.
And again, you see McCarthy making the smart throw, targeting the sidelines, noticing the open space that UNLV was leaving there. It's efficient, it's smart, it's maybe not dropping back and throwing Aaron Rodgers-esque long bombs, but it's what we want to see from Michigan.
And if you put a one-on-one corner on Roman Wilson, he better be fast, because otherwise J.J. McCarthy will make you pay, and he did right there. Now we'll see Turner to attempt the extra point. It's good. 28-0, Michigan. What a start to the second half, Vihaan.
Another extremely quick drive, and I think when Michigan scores, those key scoring opportunities are chained together in 2 or 3 plays. It's a very quick grab-and-go offense.
Absolutely. And, back to what I was kind of alluding to before, I think the reason that Michigan is throwing so much, particularly in these early games, when they necessarily might not have to, is because they want to show teams later on their schedule, maybe a Rutgers, maybe a Penn State, or Ohio State, that this is what we can do. We are not just a running football team. You're gonna have to defend the run and the pass. And ultimately, that's going to open up the running game more later in the season for J.J. McCarthy and this offense to rely on when the weather gets cold outside and it's a little bit harder to throw the football.
Yes. And I do think last season, J.J., if I'm correct, not much action on the ground, only about 14 carries for 70 yards. Something like that were the statistics. My apologies if those are incorrect. Point being, McCarthy was not a mobile quarterback last season, and if he can develop to become a mobile quarterback this season, that's the next step. That's that evolution in his game that could take him to that top-tier Heisman potential NFL level.
Absolutely. Nowadays NFL, you want a dual-threat quarterback. If not someone who's going to run and be a threat, always consistently running, you certainly want someone who has the ability to scramble in that way. And McCarthy has shown he certainly does. He can extend the play. Currently, he has 3 carries for 38 yards, a long of 17.
Yes, yes. And while, yes, it's a small sample size, this could simply be an anomaly, a spurt. It is, at the same time, very impressive to see McCarthy, scrambling with his legs. He's shown speed and trickery, and I think that's a good combination. McCarthy doesn't necessarily need to be a dual threat with the monstrous running back tandem of Corum and Edwards, but it would significantly help the unpredictability of a Michigan team that I think in its machine-like efficiency can get a little easy to read.
Yeah, and that's that triple option for you. You've got the quarterback run, you've got the handoff to that dual threat, that two-headed monster, the thunder and lightning we have with Corum and Donovan Edwards. And then, you've got McCarthy with his legs, and of course the plethora of wide receivers he's thrown to 7 different receivers in this game. And one of them I kind of want to highlight is Tyler Morris. He got involved early in the game. He's got 3 catches for 40 yards. But it's just good to see a young, I believe he's a sophomore, getting involved early in this game. And it's really encouraging for Michigan football fans to see such an explosive offense and a defense that had 5 sacks in the first half alone.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe you could chalk it up to UNLV being slightly weaker opposition than East Carolina, but it's a positive sign. It's good to see early in the season.
And here's the kickoff to De Jesus for a touchback. So now, the UNLV offense, they didn't go for it last time on 4th and 2 on their last drive. Seems that might have cost them. Had they gotten it, the score might look slightly different than it is. Now they're faced with a 28-0 deficit. This has to be desperation time for Doug Brumfield in this UNLV offense, isn't it, Vihaan?
Yes, absolutely. It's time to start going for it on 4th and 2. It's time for your no-huddle, hurry-up offense.
And they'll get to the line relatively quickly here. Here is Brumfield, and he'll keep it, throwing it. Oh, he had a man open, but just throw is way too low. Keon Sabb was closing in on it. Looked like he was targeting number 11, the former MSU man, Ricky White. He's had a pretty quiet game, as has the entire UNLV offense, but he's familiar with this Big Ten opponent in Michigan. Now we'll see a 2nd and 10 for Brumfield and UNLV. Here's the snap. He'll keep it again on the play fake. And it's bobbled and dropped. Sabb was closing in again. Not a pretty sight for this UNLV offense. The intended receiver was Ricky White again. So 2 drops for the former MSU man. Clearly not enjoying his newest stay in the Big House.
And they really haven't had the ability to open up and get explosive and be able to move like we know this UNLV team can. And again, chuck that down to Michigan's defensive setup.
Absolutely. Here's Brumfield. Winding up, throwing again to the left sideline, and almost intercepted. Keyshawn Harris got a hand out there, spearing it, knocking it away. He's targeting again Ricky White. 3 targets in a row for the former MSU Spartan. We look at the UNLV receivers. Total of 5 catches for 58 yards. And the leading receiver with 5 receptions is Jacob De Jesus for 46 yards. No one else within 4 receptions. Struggling UNLV wide receiving core.
You can chalk it down to Brumfield not having enough time to throw the ball.
Oh, excuse me, I think we missed a penalty, as UNLV have a big play here on the pitch to Vincent Davis out of bounds just shy of the 30. So we may have missed. We apologize for that. It was a roughing the passer call on Rayshawn Benny, the substitute defensive tackle that advanced UNLV to a first down. Here's the handoff again. Looks like Donovan Lester. Not much there. That's got to hurt. You get off the field defensively, and then a roughing the passer, it gets you into their midfield, and they're able to advance the drive.
It's been a pretty clean game on both sides for both teams. I believe that was our first penalty flag of the game.
I think that's right, and it has been a very clean game on both sides. I, for one, did not see the late hit that Benny committed, but nonetheless, the officials did. Here's Brumfield. He'll fire, and a diving catch is made by Ricky White. That time, he's able to hold on for a gain of 3 to the 32-yard line. And now it'll be 3rd and 3. Let's see if the Michigan defense can get a stop here and ensure a touchdown is not scored on this drive. Here is Brumfield. Brumfield, he'll hand it, and Vincent Davis stumbles for a 1-yard gain. Not much, I mean, it looked like he had some room, but just not able to keep his footing. Maybe he got tripped as he was by one of his own linemen trying to come across the field.
Yeah. Again, UNLV this has been their most promising drive of the game. They're building up, they're slow, they're being patient, but they are in Michigan territory, and let's see if they can get, it will probably be a consolation score at this point, but that's still pretty solid consolation.
Here's the 4th and 5 play, and what was that? Maybe there was a bobbled snap, but nonetheless, it is a Michigan defensive stop. They run right into the pile, and there was just nothing there. Looked like Brumfield was hesitant about whether to hand it off or keep it himself, and nonetheless, the ball carrier heads right in through the middle. No gain.
And I think this is a symptom of this team's confidence is breaking down. I'm not sure if they know what to do. There might be a little confusion as to what the best strategy is. I would be surprised if they aren't sure what they play for. Do they play just to spare themselves? Are they playing more defensive to avoid giving up more points? Or at this point, are they playing to get some scores back on the clock?
Well, that was just odd all the way around, Vihaan. I mean, it's 4th and 5. Not only has your rushing attack been able to generate only 15 yards on the day, but you decide not to throw on 4th and 5, and not only that, you run straight into the middle, the heart of that Michigan defense, into the arms of guys like Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, and Kenneth Grant, who have torn up your offensive line the whole day. Just a puzzling call.
But at the same time, I understand the 4th and 5 move, because at this point, if they want to get any points on the board, build any kind of a comeback, they can't give back Michigan the ball. And this has been a fairly slow third quarter, slower than I expected. But still, don't be surprised if the Wolverines at any minute now start trying to play game management and just trying to run the ball and get those points and get that time off the clock. I think that's something we can say any minute now. I think UNLV are expecting they could see it any more minute now. I think that provides some context as to why they decided to go for it on 4th and 5.
No, there's no doubt about why you go for it in that situation. The chance to get on the board with a touchdown, you're down 4 scores. You've got to. What I'm questioning, Vihaan, is the play call. Not to throw in that situation and to run up the middle. But nonetheless, the Michigan defense was certainly ready for it.
I personally think the smarter move might have been to throw in that situation, simply because a failed pass play is most likely going to be an incompletion. In that case, you don't worsen or better Michigan field position. You put them right where you are. But suppose you run the ball, you get knocked back a few yards, then in that case, you give Michigan much better field position. I think in such situations, it's always wise to throw the ball, especially when it's 4th and 5, or 4th and 10. 4th and 1, 4th and 2 is a little different situation. But here, I think you just have a lot more to lose if you run the ball. I mean, I guess the difference is negligible on the whole, seeing as you'll probably end up giving the ball up either way. But I just think at this point, you play damage control, you minimize your losses, you maybe settle for the incompletion or having the ball batted away, and if it builds into something, that's also great.
Yeah, as they say, Vihaan, it's a game of inches. Did not go their way that time. Now, J.J. McCarthy and the Michigan offense have a chance to extend this lead. And it'll be a bunch formation here for Michigan. McCarthy clapping, doesn't get the ball quite yet. Now he does, and it'll be a handoff to Donovan Edwards, and he doesn't have much room to go. Swarmed by the UNLV defensive front. McDuffie, among others, there on the tackle. McDuffie has 8 tackles on the game. And, I think that UNLV has done a decent job of keeping their opponents in front of them, just not able to stop them much when they do so. Here's McCarthy again. He'll throw, and it's complete to Donovan Edwards for a gain of just a couple yards. It'll be 3rd and 6 from the Michigan 37.
Given what we know about the game, what sort of play do you expect now? Do you expect them to throw it again, or do you expect them to run it? Because something tells me maybe there's going to be a run play. They'll take either the few yards to get the first down, or they'll take the loss of yards, punt the ball, and then.
Well, it seems to me that Barry Odom's playing a tactical game here. He's stacking the box. He's daring them to throw the football, and right now it's working. The run game has done nothing in the second half. Here is McCarthy. He'll throw and can't quite make them pay for it that time. Great coverage from number 2, Jackson Turner, on Roman Wilson. Nice defensive play from UNLV. It'll send it to 4th and 6, and Tommy Doman will be out for the Wolverines to punt. How about that defensive stop, Vihaan?
I think both on the last drive, barring the strange play call on the 4th and 5, and this, I think UNLV seems to have developed a bit of confidence after the 4th touchdown. I think maybe they have a little less to lose now that they already know they're behind deep. They just want to give something to their fans watching back home and to their fans who have traveled here.
Sure. I mean, at a certain point, you've got to. Oh, and here's Jacob De Jesus breaking a tackle. He's got speed. He can be dangerous. And a nice return just shy of the 40-yard line. Jacob De Jesus quietly is at a solid game for UNLV, not only leading them in receiving currently, although modest numbers. He had a 96-yard kickoff return, not for a touchdown, was tackled just short, but he can be dangerous as a special teamer, and he showed that just here.
Yeah, De Jesus is a hybrid player. He can play as both a wide receiver and a tight end, if I'm not mistaken. And players like that are very valuable because they offer a very specific build. Like, your wide receiver tight end hybrids tend to be a little bigger, tend to be a little bulkier, but also provide some blocking abilities. I think that's very valuable to have in today's game.
And now it will be Brunfield who will keep it and sacked. I believe it will be marked as a sack. Oh, perhaps they'll give him a no-gain call. Wrapped up by Braden McGregor. Nowhere to go. Michigan defensive line continues to swarm UNLV.
The Wolverines fans are still here in decent numbers. Expect to hear the strains of Mr. Brightside sooner rather than later.
It's a beautiful night, Vihaan. And here's Brumfield into traffic and nearly intercepted. I believe that was Jalen Harrell dropping back from his edge spot to make a play on that ball. Speaking of versatile players, Vihaan.
Indeed, indeed.
You know, what I find particularly interesting here is the Michigan defensive line is swarming. The Michigan, offensive line right now can't seem to generate anything because UNLV is selling out to stop the run. But nonetheless, offensively, they're not able to sustain any momentum. As here is Brumfield in the empty set in 3rd and 10. He'll look to throw, and it's batted down. Great play there.
Personally, as you said, I do think the rest of this game is a good opportunity for the Wolverines to signal to the bigger Big Ten opponents what this team really is capable of offering, which I think is a good reason to keep passing the ball, to show bigger opponents that maybe this team is not one-dimensional, that this is not this is not just a purely run-the-ball team.
Absolutely. And here is the punt. Looks like it will be Tyler Morris to return, and he's got some space. Tackled just shy of the 40-yard line, and a flag will come out on the field, multiple at that. Let's see what the call is. Another nice play from Tyler Morris, getting involved not only as a receiver, but as a special teamer. And, you know, UNLV is doing a decent job of stopping the run. And I think another reason why Michigan continues to pass here is because, frankly, they're trying to make UNLV pay for setting out to stop the run and, you know, try to make them play a balanced defense, which will help open up the running game. And, you know, I think, frankly, at this point, that's just good football. And I don't blame Sharon Moore, whoever's calling the plays, perhaps Mike Hart, for dialing up these passes and continuing to dial up these passes.
Yes, exactly. When your game plan takes a hit, when the other team has figured out how to neutralize it, what do? You simply move to another facet of it. And as you said, it helps to signal to the rest of the Big Ten that this is not a one-dimensional team, and most importantly, that this is not a team that gives up after building a big lead.
Absolutely. 35 points. 37.5 is the cover, if anyone is the spread, if anyone is interested on that. Michigan did not cover the 35-point spread, albeit they had a fairly dominant performance last week against ECU. At this point, folks watching may be interested to see if this Michigan offense can sustain the drives to do so and get up into that 37.5 or 38-point range. It'll be running into the kicker on number 82 for Michigan. I believe that's Morgan Samaj who will get penalized there. And UNLV will sustain their drive as the Michigan defense will have to come back onto the field.
Indeed. And is there anything that you would like the Michigan defense to do more of? You know, in light of this revived confidence, this building of attacks from UNLV, do you think there's anything that the Wolverines could improve on?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and we mentioned this in our pregame, Vihaan, is we wanted to see them dominate in the trenches. And they did just that, particularly on the defensive line. Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant has 2 sacks. They've been playing, meet at the quarterback all day, which has been fantastic to see. Offensively, I thought the holes were there. They were not as great as we were used to last year, but they were there along the offensive front. But, again, UNLV's adjusted well. Frankly, I'm pleased with the Michigan performance all around, and I think if the defense continues to play like this, the Michigan Wolverine fans will be very happy. Here is another punt for UNLV as it was still 4th down. Morris comes back to get it off the bounce, and he'll get away from a tackler, but cannot get away from the out-of-bounds marker as he's pushed out of bounds at around the 27-yard line.
And I'm a big fan of what Morris has been doing on some of his returns. He's not a run down the middle type of returner, but he finds those spaces. He usually veers to the side, tries to find space on the side. I think that's a smart way of returning a punt or a kick, and it's something that I hope to see more of.
Well, we saw Jake Thaw, number 26, returning the first half of this game and against ECU last week. They decided to make a change here in the second half, give Tyler Morris a try, and I think that could prove smart as he's been a little bit more explosive than Thaw thus far. And here is the give, and he's got space. It's Blake Corum down to the 45-yard line. That's one of the explosive runs we've been looking to see from the Michigan offense in the second half.
Yeah, that run had flair. That was a burst of power. That's a little different from the more efficient, methodical, target a gap and then move for 5-6 yards in the gap. No, that was potentially I'm going all the way. I'm taking this to the house run. if he hadn't been stopped.
Well, that's the type of intensity that Blake Corum brings to the table. A great contact balance runner who refuses to go down. Nice gain of 19 there from Corum. Here's McCarthy. Motion man will be Bredesen. McCarthy, he'll unload a deep ball, and he finds Cornelius Johnson over the middle, tackled to the 30-yard line. Those are the plays he's been accustomed to seeing from McCarthy. A nice 25-yard or so gain to Cornelius Johnson. Finding the gap in that defense over the middle of the field.
Now, I do think this area of the field is where we have potential to see a little more action in the run game. I am surprised by the continued lack of Donovan Edwards in this half. Is it possible that maybe the team views him as more important in the long term and is trying to rest his load or manage his load?
I think it's a great point as we see an end around here. I believe this is Cornelius Johnson as well. Can he score? No, he cannot. He's stopped by Jet Elad. Just shy of the goal line. Looks maybe at the 5-yard line. Nice creative play call there. You know, it is an interesting point. Donovan Edwards' workload you were mentioning. He just has 6 attempts, 6 carries for 9 yards on the day. It's possible that maybe there is an injury or a bruise that we don't know about. They're just trying to play it safe with him, or perhaps they're trying to give Blake Corum some more work to get him more comfortable after his injury, like you mentioned in the pregame, Vihaan. Tyler Morris is the motion man, but they'll give it to Corum. And he's got a nice, easy touchdown. A nice hole on the left side for 6.
And
Chance to go up 35-0.
And that is yet again one of the things that Blake Corum does best. He's an old-fashioned running back. You know, he's got that size, he's got that power. He can make it work down the sides, but he will also just run straight at the middle and find his space in there. The only way he can potentially become a better modern professional running back is if he improves his pass catching ability, but he still has a place as a workhorse akin to Derrick Henry.
Sure. I certainly agree. Now we'll see Jake Turner attempt the extra point. He's been perfect today. And the kick is up and good. 35-0.
Turner does admittedly have some moderately sized shoes to fill after replacing Jake Moody, who was widely beloved by Wolverines fans and was taken surprisingly high in the NFL draft this year by the San Francisco 49ers in the 3rd round. But so far, he's remained perfect. He hasn't had much to do today, but when relied on, when called upon, he's been reliable.
Last week, he did see a little bit of struggle. And, you know, Jake Moody certainly does cast a large shadow. He went 3 for 4 on extra points, missing 1, and went 1 for 2 on field goals, both 50 or longer. Made the 50, setting his career long, but missed a 52-yarder. And I know Michigan fans will probably give him some grief for that, but 52-yard field goal is no joke.
Oh, absolutely not. Once you hit the 50-yard line, it becomes much more difficult to hit those field goals. There's just so many factors that can just distort the way you kick, from the weather to simply the distance.
And here's Doman kicking it off, and it will go into the back of the end zone for a touchback. See if the Michigan defense can continue to pitch this shutout it has done thus far. You know, I think it's an interesting point, just getting back to what we were discussing earlier. Why has Donovan Edwards seen less of a workload today, and Blake Corum, meanwhile, has seen 15 attempts for 80 yards, 3 scores? And, you know, you mentioned he's, you know, working his way back from an injury last year, a pretty severe injury. But could it be they're trying to make him more comfortable in that role? Because you'd think they want to ease him in instead of giving him all this work. Here's Brumfield. Brumfield finds Ricky White for a nice gain of 25 or so yards to the 50. Well executed play action pass from Doug Brumfield.
Or maybe, like I said, executives in football at all levels are becoming wise to the predicament of the modern running back, that they have short shelf lives and oftentimes have seen their best seasons at young ages. Is it possible that there is some kind of intel in that regard on Corum, and that maybe Michigan would like to build more around Donovan Edwards?
I think that could be. I do expect that it'll be a very much of a two-headed monster. There is a fumble, and it's recovered by UNLV, but looks like Vincent Davis just lost the football straight out, but able to, fortunately for UNLV, backtrack, have the coordination to recover his own fumble, but that'll be a fairly decent loss on that play.
And it's another example of the sloppiness that we've seen with UNLV in the second half, most notably being that 4th and 5 attempt earlier. And it's probably not indicative of anything in the grander scheme, but it just shows a team losing its composure as it continues to go under a further and further distress.
Here's Broomfield. And he connects, but they'll say incomplete. He was trying to find Ricky White, and they'll say the visual said he did not have control of the football. It'll be 3rd and 19. And now at this point, Vihaan, what more do you need to see from this Michigan team in the remainder of the second half to, satisfy any qualms you may have had about their first game against ECU?
Well, honestly, I'd just like to see mistake-free football. I'd like to see... I'm not super big on rotation. I think if the starters can handle still being in the game, then let them play.
Brumfield, he connects. Looks like that will be Seneca McKee with the catch. Excuse me, that'll be Timothy Connerly with the reception. Now we have a 4th down and 8 opportunity for UNLV. Perhaps a way to redeem themselves in a way from that mess of a 4th and 5 we saw earlier. But, back to what we were saying, for me, this is the perfect performance you want to see from Michigan. I think they've checked all the boxes for the areas of improvement, in my book.
Yes, exactly. And I think the major areas that I was worried about, those questions have been answered by today.
Absolutely. As UNLV will take time out here, talk things over, make sure that they have this 4th and 8 play call down pat. As we have around a minute to go in the 3rd.
In addition to there being no interceptions or fumbles, Michigan hasn't looked close to one either. There's not been any of those throws where sometimes you think, ooh, that should have been an interception, but just Lady Luck was on our side. No, it's been clean throws, even ones into pressure situations. You never really had the doubt that McCarthy was going to throw an interception.
And that's not something we could say at the same time last year. When McCarthy did win that starting job, there were throws or plays that said, oh, throw that away. Oh, don't force that in there. We have not seen that thus far this season. And I think that speaks to his continued growth. The one thing maybe I would like to see from JJ is we've seen a lot of intermediate throws, maybe capping out at 25, 30 yards. What about that deep bomb? When are we going to see him really unload one down the sideline or a post route? Perhaps we'll get that later in the season, Vihaan, when they need it.
Yes, absolutely, and Roman Wilson is an ideal candidate for a ball like that.
Absolutely. And here's Brumfield. They were setting up the screen, and Michigan was all over it. He had maize and blue in his face, could not find number 22, Jaden Thomas. And, let's give this Michigan defense credit. 268 yards, 5 touchdowns last week for UNLV in a dominant performance against Bryant. Michigan has shown they are no Bryant. 21 attempts, 6 yards for the UNLV, ground attack. Now, after the turnover on downs, Michigan will have the football. See if this will be a run or yet another pass. Oh, and it's blown up. Oh no! Davis Warren will keep it. He is into the game. J.J. McCarthy was taken out, and it looks like they will get the UNLV defender for a late hit. You can see McCarthy jumping up and down on the sidelines, seeing his backup quarterback get into the game. And excuse me, that is not Davis Warren. It'll be Jack Tuttle. Jack Tuttle, the grad transfer, I believe, from Indiana, with a nice keep on the read option. So they finally decide to go away from McCarthy, Vihaan. What do you make of that decision?
I can't say I hate it. McCarthy hasn't been under significant duress today, but at the same time, it helps to be careful. And while there is the idea of sending a statement of intent to the rest of the Big Ten that, Michigan is here, not just that Michigan is here to win this championship and McCarthy is here to compete for this Heisman. At the same time, I think it is better to maybe give a chance to Tuttle, especially with McCarthy, I believe, being eligible to declare for the draft in next year, I believe.
I believe he is eligible after this season, Vihaan. We saw Davis Warren come in at around this time in the game last week against ECU. Now, I guess that quarterback 2 job so up for grabs. They give Tuttle the opportunity. Now, it's important to note Davis Warren didn't attempt to pass last week. Let's see if Tuttle is able to get one under his belt today. And it looks like there will be and Tuttle is okay. That was Jack Tuttle injured on the sidelines. He's jogging out now from what was he was hiding behind, I guess, or getting treatment under the near the UNLV bench. Apologies for that. Tuttle was shaken up on that late hit. Looks like he will not remain in the game. And now Davis Warren will come in. You hate to see that for Jack Tuttle. A nice keep and just poor play from UNLV to hit him late. And, hopefully his injury isn't too serious.
It's very unsportsmanlike. Cast a shot on a team that I think a lot of people at least had some sympathy for going into today. It's not what you like to see.
Now here is Davis Warren motioning Carmelo English towards the formation. Carmelo English, the freshman, getting some playing time here toward the end of the third quarter. Here's Warren. He'll hand it off. And that's Khalil Mullings tackled after a gain of 2 or 3 yards. Just shy of 20. But I think, we've mentioned the importance of J.J. McCarthy so far in his brilliant play over the last 2 weeks. But if, forbid something happen to McCarthy, it's good to know, last year there was a Cade McNamara, but until he got shut down for the season, he was on that team. You could feel confident about having a veteran come into the game and play if you needed to. So these reps for Davis Warren, or if there's an Alex Orji who comes in later or a Jack Tuttle later, whoever ends up being the quarterback 2, that becomes more important for the Michigan Wolverines because of how important J.J. McCarthy has been to this team.
And keep in mind, McCarthy also got to start as a backup quarterback.
That's right. That's right. I'd like to think that none of these guys are coming for his job quite yet, but that is a good point. His emergence really came, I believe, in the Hawaii game.
Yes.
Last year, and I believe the week after, or 2 weeks after, he was named the starter over Cade McNamara.
Yes, and he's clearly not a plug-and-chug quarterback because you could see that gravitas in him. You could see that there's a little something extra there in the way he makes those reads, in the way he's able to scramble. And you can even tell off the field, everything we know about him gives the direction that he's a good leader, that he's a people's person, a people's player. Maybe it's not wise to assume the inner workings of McCarthy's mind, but all signs point to him having that little something extra that has enabled Michigan to ascend to the heights that they are currently at. And this season, Michigan Wolverines are very demanding fans. It's been a long wait for a blue-chip college football program. I believe second most national championships, third most wins all time, third highest record all time. Wolverines fans, students, alumni are getting impatient, and is this the generation that's going to take them back to the promised land? Who knows? We sure hope so. I'm sure if you're listening to this broadcast, you sure hope so as well.
Absolutely. And I think the Wolverines have shown us plenty in this game of what they can do. A dominant 35-0 performance over UNLV going into the fourth quarter. And speaking of those Michigan Wolverine fans, this stadium is still fairly packed given the score, given where we are in the game, and I will probably contribute that to, what a beautiful night this is, but also it's been fun watching this Michigan offense and defense work today.
Yeah, and now you can see those fans going crazy for their favorite song, the Las Vegas Outfit the Killers' iconic Mr. Brightside. I don't know how it became a Michigan tradition, but indeed it is. The fans love it.
Absolutely. That could be keeping them in their seats as well.
Yeah, I myself sometimes will stay to the end. Okay, I just need to sing that song before I get out of here. And also at the same time, I do think the more hardcore football fans amongst the Michigan faithful are still excited to see the substitutes, are still excited to keep an eye on the team. It's very early days. No one has gotten sick of football yet. In fact, they just crave some more, as I'm sure many of these same fans will tune into NFL Sunday tomorrow morning.
Of course. And, watching, the high execution of the Michigan team, it's a good preview for, I'm sure they have I believe Jim Harbaugh said that he expects them to potentially even break Georgia's record of 15 players drafted into the NFL draft this season. We'll see about that. That's a big number, but certainly a nice preview for NFL fans, or the high quality of football is a nice preview for the professional level tomorrow afternoon.
Right away, two names jump out at you as NFL already: McCarthy, Corum, potentially Edwards, but we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely.
It will be very interesting to see if McCarthy manages to run back the undefeated season from last year. Maybe, let's not say that Michigan wins the championship. Maybe, let's say they lose in the playoff again. How does that affect his draft stock? You have to think he's one of the first few quarterbacks off the board if he declares in that case.
Certainly. And here's Davis Warren. His pass is incomplete, intended for Max Bredesen. Now we're at that 35-point mark. If you're, betted on this game, got to be fairly happy with things, how they stand now if you bet on the over spread for Michigan.
Indeed. Now just hope that UNLV does not somehow score a touchdown and in the process break streaks of many bettors.
And we will have a Michigan timeout here. Guess they want to talk about this crucial 3rd and 7, as they had a trips right formation with freshman featured Carmelo English, number 5, look for him, and Frederick Moore. This time in the game is where you get to see what is the future of Michigan football, especially what are the future weapons that if J.J. McCarthy does go, who is the next quarterback throwing to? And it likely could be one of these freshmen, Carmelo English or Frederick Moore, number 3.
Yes, with college football, you don't have the same liberty as an NFL team of thinking of building for 10, 15 years. You have to be thinking year in and year out, okay, he's good. Who's replacing him? It's one of those aspects that makes the college game a lot more volatile, because one bad recruiting class can break you, one good recruiting class can make you.
Absolutely. Here is Warren looking to throw on 3rd and 7. It's picked off! UNLV has it to the 25-yard line. That was number 1, Tremaine Williams. Well, Dre Williams with the interception. Excuse me.
Elsewhere in college football, rivals Michigan State also have a healthy 35-plus point lead. They are leading 38-0 against Richmond beginning their fourth quarter. And
The state of Michigan is doing well today.
as is the state of Pennsylvania, as Penn State racks up a 63-7 victory against Delaware. Ohio State, an expected 35-7 victory against Youngstown. Kansas beats Illinois 34-23 and what looks to be an excited game.
And, we mentioned mistake-3 football. The first turnover of the game was, in fact, committed by Michigan, up 35-0. Davis Warren throwing kind of into zone coverage. Great play by Dre Williams to step up, make that interception. And that's not what you'd like to see from a potential even backup quarterback, or at all, if you're a Wolverine fan. But up 35-0, I think the Wolverines still feel fairly good about their position in this game.
Yep, yeah, and now is the time to experiment. Now is the time to throw in substitutes if it's necessary. It's fair game to Mike Hart how he wants to handle the way this game goes.
And we can see that Jack Tuttle, 13, looks to be okay, throwing on the sideline here. Perhaps he will come into that game after that Davis Warren interception that likely hurt his stock as a chance to compete for the backup quarterback job behind J.J. McCarthy.
We can see the Michigan Stadium is emptying a bit, which is to be expected as the game is effectively clinched. The starters are going to be pulled, and it is quite the trip back to dorms or to apartments for the majority of the university's devoted student faithful.
And Vihaan, I will hold that if it was 85 degrees, this may have been emptied shortly after halftime. But we were blessed with a beautiful night here, probably just over, 70 degrees maybe. Pleasant weather, but at this point, you're certainly right. 35-0 with 14:45 left in the fourth. Decent amount of time left, but it's hard to think UNLV can mount any sort of comeback.
As commentators, we do wish we could bring you a slightly more exciting game, but as Michigan students and fans, we're not exactly complaining here.
No, not at all. Not at all. Now here's the UNLV offense back to work. The tackle will be made after a gain of 2. And the UNLV backup quarterback now, Jaden Maeva, is into the game. Fun fact, Vihaan, he is a 3-star recruit, the highest quarterback recruit to choose to attend UNLV. So we will be watching him, looks like, for the remainder of this game.
And on the topic of high-star recruits, we would, of course, like to mention Jaden Davis, who will hopefully excite Michigan faithful in a few years.
Yes. 5-star quarterback, a big signing for the Wolverines offense to feel good about their quarterback security after J.J. McCarthy. As Maeva is able to complete a pass for the first down, advancing the ball past the 35-yard line. And here's another give to Jaden Thomas. You'd have to think they'd want to pass a little bit more here, Vihaan, considering the score. They don't seem to be in any particular rush. I guess just giving their young quarterback some time to get a chance to feel things out against this strong Michigan defense.
At the same time, I don't think they're going to start running the ball aggressively now and trying to get the game over with. I still think they'll play with what they have left on the field just as a service to their fans who want to see their promising young quarterback in action.
Absolutely. Here is Maeva. He will throw this time. and find a receiver out past the 50. It is Ricky White. Jaden McBurrows had the tackle there. Good to see him getting some playing time here, along with the other Michigan defensive reserves. You have to think at this point there's no point in risking injury for Michigan starters.
Yeah, no, and there really isn't much to play for Michigan anymore.
And here's Ricky White again on the screen, getting some nice, short, easy completions for Jaden Maeva. Just shy of the 40-yard line. As Braden McGregor will come off. So if you're a UNLV fan, right, let's hop into their shoes for a second. Are there any positives to take away from this game?
In spite of the heavy scoreline, you really can't say this was unexpected for UNLV to lose in such manner. And in fact, they were able to get to the quarterback decently often. Maybe their offense was anemic, yes, but I do think their defense made those tackles, didn't give up a lot of space to Michigan to exploit, managed to bottle up some more explosive and dominant aspects of that Michigan offense.
Yeah, anemic is a great word. As Maeva uncorks a ball incomplete intended for Zael Griffin. Great coverage by the Michigan Wolverines in the secondary. And now here's a 3rd and 6 for Maeva. And he'll hand it off. Looks like it's Courtney Reese. And not much there. Jaden Thomas, excuse me, is the ball carrier. Last year for UNLV, not a bad season. Their first solid campaign in a few years, going 5-7 overall. 3-7, I believe, in the Mountain West, which wasn't ideal, but not a bad showing given their previous performances. Here is Maeva again to throw. Oh, he had Zael Griffin streaking over the middle. Keon Sabb was trailing, but just overthrows him as he was being pressured by the Wolverine defensive line. And looks like we'll take a timeout. And, oh, excuse me, that was 4th down. It will be Michigan offense. We'll have the ball now.
Wildly bad overthrow, but it isn't entirely Maeva's fault, as you have to attribute it to the Michigan defensive line managing to get pressure, which, again, a big positive of the game if you're a Michigan fan.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that would be a nice touchdown to have if you're a UNLV fan. See your young 3-star quarterback complete one over the middle. Would have been a nice throw and catch under pressure. Just lets the throw get a little bit away from him. But now we'll see. I assume Jack Tuttle will be the quarterback here again for Michigan on this next drive. And it's always interesting to see if the Michigan defense can continue to pitch the shutout. Weren't able to do so last week as East Carolina got 3 points on the board. What do you stake the odds on this game ending in no score for UNLV?
I would say it's pretty high. I think Maeva hasn't been entirely convincing ever since he came on. I don't see them being more likely to score with him than they were with Brunfield. So yeah, I don't see Michigan scoring another touchdown. Maybe they will, but I don't think it's likely that UNLV scores another touchdown. I'll say, you know what? I'll say this game ends 42-0.
42. So one more score you predict for the Wolverines. Doesn't seem out of the question here. All about whether or not whoever's playing quarterback can make some completions. They were in the red zone with Davis Warren before the interception. Presumably that drive would have ended in points otherwise. And I guess, not to keep bringing up the betting, but it is, notable that had they kicked that field goal, it'd be 38-0. The game ended there. People might be making some money.
Yeah.
Or if you bet on the under, you could make some money.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we really start to see the student section empty a little bit, but good for the adults here. The regular sections seem fairly full, which is always good to see.
Yeah, of course, we're not going anywhere. We will bring you to the end of this game and to the postgame.
No, we will be right here, as always, Vihaan. It looks like it will be a new quarterback in. It'll be Jaden Denegal will come in. Number 4 for the Wolverines. See what they have in him. Take the snap out of the shotgun. And he'll hand it to CJ Stokes. He'll be wrapped up after maybe forward progress. He'll give him a 5-yard gain of the 45. As Samaj Morgan will check in. Still looking forward to seeing whether or not some of these freshmen, Frederick Moore or Carmelo English, lined up on out wide to the right, can get involved here. Denegal communicating to his offensive line. Take the snap. And it'll be another handoff. It is CJ Stokes, wrapped up after a gain of 2. So at this point, Michigan just looking to run out the clock. Got 9:30 left in the game.
So I think this game has gone the way a lot of people thought it would. But did anything surprise you massively?
That's a good question, Vihaan. I think, honestly, I think part of me expected a little bit of regression from J.J. McCarthy because he played so well last time, as Denegal not able to get away. We'll get a gain of 1 after being wrapped up. But I think just his performance building off what he did last week was impressive. Obviously, we expect those things from him, but it's hard to repeat. To be just, if he was 9 out of 10 last week, it's hard to get to 10 out of 10 the week after, and I think he did do that. Secondly, I didn't expect this Michigan defensive line to be just as dominant, particularly against a UNLV offense that throws so many wrinkles, counters, misdirections. It can be hard to pin your ears back and get to the quarterback. But I think the Michigan defense did just that.
Yeah, I'm going to take the pass rush as the biggest pleasant surprise from today.
Absolutely.
Because I think we all expected the run game to adjust back to its usually high standards, but I think a lot of people going off both last season and this season did expect the pass rush to be a point of continued weakness, but it really hasn't been. If anything, it's been the main reason why Michigan was able to suffocate a very explosive and dynamic UNLV offense.
Absolutely, as Tommy Doman just punted inside, I believe, the Michigan 10. There is a penalty. Be a 5-yard penalty. So Doman will punt again, but I think it has been a pleasant surprise. We mentioned the fact the significant starters that Michigan lost in Mike Morris and Mozzie Smith, 2 key players in the defensive line, and Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, Kenny Grant have more than made up for it on the interior. And, we mentioned our concerns about Jalen Harrell and Josiah Stewart only having 3.5 sacks coming into this game each. They both, at least I believe Jalen Harrow had 2 sacks in this game alone. They both met at the quarterback multiple times, which was good to see. And here's the punt by Doman. Fair catch will be taken. I believe that is Jacob De Jesus. How about you, Vihaan? Was there anything that surprised you massively about this game?
I won't say it's a massive surprise, but it's a little puzzling. The lack of involvement for Edwards. You'd think they'd be doing everything they could to get one of the best running backs in college football the ball, but that just hasn't really been the case. And I think that could be a big fixture of the postgame, which is going to be right here on WCBN, so don't go anywhere.
Absolutely. 6 carries for 9 yards. Perhaps he was shaken up. An injury we failed to catch. He could be keeping him out. Blake Corum, on the other hand, has been doing very well on the ground. 15 attempts for 80 yards. Of course, he now has a hat trick of touchdowns on this game. Picking up from where Roman Wilson left off. He had a hat trick against ECU. Passes the baton to Blake Corum. He's averaged just under 5.5 yards per carry. But yeah, I think I don't think Michigan Wolverines fans, unless there is an injury that is serious, to worry, because I think that this Thunder and Lightning combination will be here for the future, albeit the puzzling lack of involvement from Edwards today.
Indeed. And there's simple explanations, like he's nursing an injury we don't know about, or they focus on rehabilitating Blake Corum, or there could be something more complicated. We don't know, and it isn't always wise for us to speculate, so I guess we just wait and see how this season and the load management of the run game proceeds. It's definitely one of the most interesting storylines surrounding Michigan football, I'll say that.
Absolutely. Likely 2 NFL caliber running backs on this roster. If you're just joining us, or have been joining us, thank you for tuning into WCBN coverage of Michigan football. 35-0. Michigan Wolverines lead UNLV. There with around 8:17 left in the 4th quarter.
Absolutely, yes. And remember that WCBN produces a variety of sporting content, coverage for every Michigan sport available, and Monday through Thursday starting September 18th, the Daily Sports Report, our 30-minute free-form sports talk show, airing on FM radio. So if you like what you're hearing today, please tune in and support us. We've got a team of very talented people working to bring you the best commentary and the best debate of collegiate and nationwide professional sports.
Absolutely, and I'm sure when that comes around, we'll be talking about not only Michigan football, so if you want more of that, get your fix on those DSRs, but as well as NFL action picking up this Sunday. So when September 18th does come around, we will have plenty to talk about, Vihaan.
Especially as I'm aware, many of you are passionate Detroit Lions fans. Do not be alarmed. There will be plenty of Detroit Lions related talk on the DSRs once they restart on September 18th.
Of course. Now we will see UNLV get started from just inside the 20. Here's Maeva. He'll hand it off. Here's some space. And it looks like the ball carrier, Jaden Thomas? It might be Cameron Reese. It will be Reese who will take it up to the 28-yard line. Nice little run for UNLV. But how about those Lions, Vihaan?
Yep, big win for them against the Kansas City Chiefs. You could feel the excitement everywhere.
Yeah, I think many were expecting that game to go in a very different way. You have the reigning Super Bowl champions hosting the Detroit Lions, still a bit of a proved team, but a young team at home, and Lions go on the road, take care of business. Impressive win for them.
As you can see, pretty straightforward ending to today's game. Both teams will likely have a couple of 4 and outs, and at some point Michigan will be able to take their final knee.
But not quite yet, as Maeva is able to connect down the field. A absolute dart of a throw to number 6 for UNLV. That'll be a 1st and 10 from the 44. Maeva rolling out again and connecting. Finds Christian Earls, the tight end. So Maeva making some nice throws. That's got to be encouraging for UNLV fans.
Yes, definitely. And you always want to take away positives, even from every loss. And as we said earlier, UNLV's defense was not entirely bad.
Here's Maeva. He'll look to scramble in. He does. He'll run and tackle just short of the 1st down marker. Around 2 yards to go. Excuse me, 5 yards to go. It'll be 2nd and 5. But yeah, that was a great deep shot from Maeva, stepping up in the pocket, finding a receiver down the left side. Not, terrible coverage, but just a good throw and catch. This may be a false start or a jump. Yep, false start will back up Maeva in the Rebel offense to the 33-yard line.
As big as the scores are, notice that they aren't quite as note that they're not as quite as lopsided as our early season games last season, and it could be that Michigan is playing better opponents. That's obviously the case. But at the same time, maybe it's a reflection of movement away from a very offensive strategy. Maybe Michigan is prioritizing more defensive, more cautious play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, they say that the first few weeks really dictate how good a team can be, as Maeva will take off yet again, and he stopped maybe just shy of the 1st down marker. But yeah, these first few games, albeit against what people may consider, lesser opponents or your opponents with less talented competition, they really dictate how good a team can be. And, it's a good question of whether or not Michigan is maybe, quote-unquote, not playing as well as last season, or if it's a question of maybe this is better competition from Colorado State and Hawaii of last year. Here's the handoff, and it looks like it will be a 1st down for UNLV, for Courtney Reese. Reese has 3 carries today for 10 yards. UNLV rushing attack still leaves a lot to be desired, especially again after 268 yards last time out against Bryant. 29 attempts, 38 yards. Just over 1 yard a carry. Maeva, he'll hand it off again to Courtney Reese down at the 20.
We are entering the final 4 minutes of the 4th quarter. Is there anything from these last 4 minutes that, obviously you don't expect anything big to happen, but is there anything in these last 4 minutes that if Michigan did it, it would make you happy?
Whew. I've got to say I'm pretty thrilled with this performance. This is going to sound nuts, but if JJ just would come in and just, throw a 60-yard bomb in the next offensive drive, that'd make me pretty happy. As UNLV will get on the board here with a rushing touchdown, gaping hole. will be, the handoff will have been to, I think that is number 29, UNLV getting into a long list of runners. That is Jordan Youngs Humphrey with a touchdown. So, no longer a shutout.
Yes, and apologies to our betting friends whose cover has just been ruined.
Yes, indeed. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to this phrase, but it has been said that good teams win and great teams cover, Vihaan.
Indeed. And I think it speaks volumes of the standards of the Michigan program that Harbaugh has come to set, that
Absolutely.
that we here are questioning if this team is as good as they were last year after back-to-back blowout victories, just because the standards that this team set last season were so high.
You know, the standard is the standard for, you know, the Michigan Wolverines. Expectations will always be high, you know, frankly, as they should be. Back-to-back Big Ten championships. Ranked number 2 in the country. And the expectation is this year, Vihaan, is to win a national championship. It is, you know, forgive me if I'm overstating this, it is win or bust.
Exactly. Yes, because you have back-to-back years where you were upset. Okay, no, losing to Georgia was not an upset, but last year was a significant upset. There were back-to-back years where Michigan entered the playing field as a favorite to take home the national championship and failed both times. And yes, being one of 4 teams out of 131 in the country to play for that national championship is big, yes. But when you're in Michigan, when you're one of the most vaunted and prestigious college football programs in the country, and you haven't won a championship since 1997, questions need to be asked. It's very similar to a team like, for example, the Boston Celtics or the New York Yankees, who have both had immense success in their respective sports, but have not brought home a championship in more than a decade. That's a standard that Michigan has set, and it's a standard that demands to be met, that the passionate fans and students of this university, that alumni, that anyone growing up in this part of the state of Michigan has dreamed of them setting.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. If you take it to the NFL level, perhaps a franchise like the Pittsburgh Steelers, 6 Super Bowl titles, have not won one in more than a decade. But I think, you know, you look at this team, and you look back to what it was last year, that heartbreaking game against TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. You've got to look at this performance, Vihaan. It's hard for me to believe that this team doesn't smoke them. I mean, maybe that's me just commenting on how poor TCU has looked through the first, you know, week or so of the season. But, you know, I think you put this team against TCU's old team, it's not close.
It was an astounding result, and while Michigan would have likely not beaten a Georgia team that is likely going to be regarded as one of the greatest college football teams of all time, you would have expected at least a competitive game.
So, now I ask you, Vihaan, what does this team need to look like? You know, from now to the end of the season, to secure not only a spot in the college football playoff, but a chance to play for a national championship. What is it missing? What needs to happen for you? And again, performing against better competition is one of them. But what are some of those intangibles?
Well, some of those intangibles I think would be not just performing against better competition. I think there need to be those close, scrape-it-out victories, because teams that tend to just walk it and go undefeated, they oftentimes walk into a playoff game or a championship game unprepared for what that next level of challenge brings. I think this team genuinely needs that like double-digit comeback victory at some point to prove themselves.
Absolutely. Nice return we just saw there by Samaj Morgan. Now we'll see Jaden Denegal take the field again for what would probably be the last drive of this game for the Michigan Wolverine offense.
You know, a double-digit comeback victory, you know, a close game against tough opposition, you know, you just need those games. Like every championship-winning team in recent memory, from the Kansas City Chiefs in 2023, from Argentina's recent World Cup winners, had that one game that they ground out and they made you think, this is it, that this is the year. You need that game from Michigan against Ohio State or Penn State for them to just pull a win out of the bag, that you didn't think they were going to get. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't see much of that last year. Even the Ohio State and the Penn State games last year were blowouts.
Well, one game, I do think the Illinois game, which was, I believe, the last game in the Big House of last season, that game was hard fought. That game was gritty, and it was not pretty. It was, I believe, there might have been some precipitation coming down, whether that was rain or snow, very cold weather, and it came down to a last-second, I believe, Jake Moody field goal that won the game. That's what I thought that game was, for Michigan against a Big Ten opponent in Illinois. But I think if you can, again, maybe there's something to, can you do that against a Penn State or Ohio State? Maybe that's different, but we'll find out in the coming weeks.
And at the end of the day, you only play who's in front of you.
And here's a free play for Denegal. Hill looked and fire. He's got a man wide open. Beautiful throw and catch to Samaje Morgan to the 30-yard line. Denegal steps up, unleashes it, takes advantage of a free play, a defensive error on the jump from the UNLV defense. Really nice thrown ball from Denegal. Find the open man in the middle of the field. Tackle made by Jackson Turner.
But ultimately, I do think it can be simple as in, obviously, not losing is a must. It's very likely that Michigan, with the loss, might even miss out on the playoff entirely. They need to win all 14 games, preferably in commanding fashion. Apart from that, it's hard to say what I think would make this team a championship team, because I said yes, most championship teams have that one gritty, grinded out, ugly victory, but it's not the norm. It's not a universal standard.
Yeah, if Michigan blew out every single, team on their schedule this year, I think most people would be pretty happy, Vihaan.
Yeah. I think we all certainly would, but I'm not sure if it's something that it's worth extensively debating. I think.
No, I won't die on this hill.
the first two games are promising, but just not quite as overwhelming and suffocating as some of the games were last season. And maybe it's cause for concern. Maybe it isn't. We're here to guide you through this season of football and see how it plays out.
Here's Denegal. He'll hand it off for almost no gain.
And that is going to be it at the Big House. Final score, Michigan 35, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas 7. You've been watching this with WCBN Sports. Stay tuned, though, because we do have a post-game show ready for you. Shai, I know during our last quarter or so of football, as the action started to wind down, we started to touch upon a lot of these aspects, but just give me a summary of what you saw in this game as a whole. What did you like? What didn't you like? What needs to improve? What can stay the same?
I think it was a lot more than I liked than I didn't like. And frankly, you mentioned before that, we were really shellacking teams at last season against Colorado State and Hawaii and whatnot. I almost think that this game was a more complete performance as the players walk onto the field to shake hands. I almost think this was a more complete performance than those games, despite the score being less lopsided. J.J. McCarthy looks great. The offensive line was improved. If I had to say, the defensive line looked fantastic. If there was one thing I'd like to see be a little bit better, is that explosiveness in the running game. We did get a better performance there with 179 yards on 33 carries, but given how this game played out, given how Michigan dictated the pace of the game, you would expected the running game to be a little bit more effective. So if I was nitpicking there, that is what I would say. But overall, it's really hard to be upset with this performance.
Absolutely, yes. And there doesn't look to be a clear weakness on this team. McCarthy looked fantastic. We've been over this at length. He's got a good variety of receivers to throw to. The run game is very, very good. The defense, especially the pass rushers, stepped up. The secondary wasn't given a lot to do today, but I feel like they had their moments. On the whole, It's a complete performance. Maybe, as you said, we need to see a performance against a another Big Ten opponent to see like some of the aspects of this team that weren't necessarily tested today. But based on the first 2 weeks, there's a lot to like from today. Not much to dislike.
I agree, and we have another shot at another non-conference opponent next week in prime time against Bowling Green. Please stay tuned to WCBN. We'll have coverage of that game, so we'll have a chance to get another one of these non-conference wins. I don't want to call it an easy win, but an opponent that Michigan should feel comfortable besting here at the Big House before taking on their first Big Ten opponent in Rutgers in 2 weeks. Is there anything that you would want to see against Bowling Green or against Rutgers that would make you feel a little bit better about this team?
Well, I mentioned that I didn't think the secondary was as tested as it could have been, and I'd like to see a little more of that. Yes, it is good that they weren't tested by by Michigan's pass rush, shutting down Brumsfield and the other quarterbacks that UNLV trotted out. But at the same time, it would fill you with a bit more confidence just to see, an interception or a nice safety blitz. Something along those lines is what I'm really looking for in the next 2 weeks.
And hopefully, Rutgers, that game, as the Michigan players will leave the field now through the tunnel, that game, I think, should be a little bit more of a defensive test for J.J. McCarthy. Rutgers is not expected to be great this season, but last year, I don't think many of us will forget that game in Jersey where it was a bit of a struggle. First half was very close, so perhaps J.J. McCarthy will get more of a test in that game. Just to recap it for you, 35-7 Michigan Wolverine victory. J.J. McCarthy, another great performance, mimicking similar to what he did last week against ECU, but I think we'd both agree with more impressive throws threading the needle. He totaled 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, a nice completion percentage of 88%, which I believe even tops last week's number. Rushing for your Michigan Wolverines, 33 attempts, 179 yards, just under 5, so around 5.4 yards per carry, and the defense was swarming.
Yes, and we're just going to wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for staying. It is our pleasure to bring you as much Michigan athletics content as the university has to offer. Once again, I'm Vihaan Easwar. This has been Shai, Dweck, and we are going to leave you with a good night and go Blue.